What do we do?
One, two, three.
One.
Wait, what do we call this? Just Muay Thai Bones?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we do it 1, 2, 3. What do we do? 1, 2, 3.
Welcome to Muay Thai Bones.
Sometimes we name these variations.
It's just the shorter version.
Well, this is not the on-the-road version. And actually, if you're listening to this on audio, we are outside. We took this outside. We have a little garden where we live. So we went into the garden because podcasts indoors are kind of boring.
Yeah, you don't like the blank wall behind us.
You love the blank wall?
What I like about the car is the kind of Hitchcock stuff in the background.
Totally.
We don't have that in the house.
Totally.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a pet peeve of mine. The Joe Rogan podcast I watched on YouTube. It wasn't bad looking at his brick wall. But when I'm gonna watch a podcast, I see their setup and I'm like, I don't want to watch this for 2 hours.
So really, Kevin is talking to the people who watch this on YouTube, which anyone can do. It's free. As a patron, you can download it.
Going right into the
segueing.
business.
You can, as a patron, you can subscribe however you listen to your podcast. You can get the audio only, so you can take us in your ears and go the way that podcasts are usually consumed.
I personally like to imagine, because I lived in New York City for a while and then outside of New York, I personally imagine people listening to our podcast on the subway. That's what I like to imagine.
We've messed around with our setup over the time that we've done this and tried to make adjustments to the audio and stuff like this. We had it wasn't quite a complaint, but a critique early on that in the audio, if someone had to take their earphone out to do something like crossing the street or interacting with someone, that they would take Kevin out.
It would be like exit right. We have since fixed that. That was a very early audio
You can't take
issue.
Kevin out anymore.
No. Sylvie would love that option.
Although I do appreciate that in the Sophie's Choice, I was the earphone that was selected.
That's not even a hard choice. Sophie's Choice is a hard choice.
Yes, it's a terrible comparison.
So if you're listening to this on audio only, our beloved patron supporters, I apologize if there's going to be some wind ruffle sound.
We don't control the weather yet.
Well, we're deciding to be outside a little bit. Also, I don't know. I like changing things up, so we're changing it up. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Is that what we do? Housekeeping. I worked hard and put up a new Sylvie store. Basically, Bleeding Edge, who made our great shirts, decided to concentrate on making their equipment and are no longer making shirts. So in order to keep the flow of a minor bit of income to Karahat and Yodkumpan, we made shirts for them. When you buy their shirt, Sylvie basically the next day sends all the profit that would go, but the net profit, right to them. So they get a little pop of income.
And the shirts that are not specifically Karahat or Yodkumpan, obviously that money goes directly to them. If it's something like this shirt, the Legends shirt, that goes into the crew fund.
Yes, but what I was going to say was we had to find a different vendor and setup. So we have a totally new setup, and I spent a day or so putting together the Sylvie store. We'll put a link in the description. So all the t-shirts and everything that we were offering and the shorts and everything are all in one place now. And we were able to, if you're not a huge Sylvie fan, I'm going down a little bit of a path here, but I love this. One of the first shirts that we offered was the Sao Nok Lang Cow Miss Gangster Knee t-shirt.
Which is the name that was given to me by Muay Thai Press.
Yeah.
Sao Nok Lang Cow.
And it has a graphic, like a kind of like graphic novel graphic of you fighting, putting a pretty great knee and lock on Gao Da. Must have been like fight 75 or something.
That's a long time ago.
It was a really long time ago.
Yeah.
But it's a great shirt, and when we originally moved over to Bleeding Edge, we had lost the graphic, so that shirt was discontinued and gone. And as we were putting together the store, I found the graphic again, so we were able to recreate the shirt.
It's back.
It's back, and I'm kind of excited by that.
When Kevin says he spent a day or two working on something, he actually means he spent the entire day or two. He works very, very hard for these things that I'm very grateful I don't have to do those things.
There's a lot of stuff on the back end that, I know how to do this stuff, but I'm not really good at it. I just have to slog it. So I was very pleased with the slogging that we got this up. The shirts are available through Printful, but through this store, I don't know when you call that, a portal. And thank you to the people that we asked to test the store, the people who went and got shirts early to test and kind of like review how good they are. And
yeah, both the process of actually purchasing it, making sure that that works, but also like how does the shirt feel? Like, is it
totally
wearable?
And if you get a shirt and you have thoughts about it, we could still probably modify the product, choose a different based shirt or something. We're going down a path here.
Yes. This actually reminds me, if you're new to our Muay Thai Bones podcast, we talk about all things Muay Thai. Like this is how we talk in general all day with each other. And we decided that we would share this with other people who are interested in hearing about Muay Thai and all its different facets, all the interesting ways that it connects to other things. We do talk a lot, so if you're not interested in the subject, just skip forward like 10, 15 minutes usually.
Yeah, and I think we're putting timestamps for people who are on Patreon. We have to create some kind of bonus for the people that support us, so we put the reading notes for our podcast, like all the cool related stuff that inspires us and informs us. We put that stuff on the patron post for patrons. So if you're watching on YouTube and you want to get into a subject, you can see what kind of like the footnotes of it and the focus of we'll get going in a minute or two, but one of my inspirations or my thoughts about the Muay Thai Bones is I want to take a topic and go deep dive into it. Too deep. Like I want to lose people a little bit. Like
Kevin loses me sometimes.
you might be into it, but I want to go the next layer of depth or detail or ramifications, big thoughts for the few people who are like, I love this. Can we go deeper? So you can go down with us on the next topic, and you'd be like, that's pretty good, pretty interesting. Oh, they're going a little too far. And then you can just jump out and go to the next topic, right? But for a few people, like to me, the podcast is really about doing these deep dives that will take maybe not our entire audience with us on each subject. Because this is how we think and relate to Muay Thai, and we kind of want to share that. And for me, we've earned this depth because of how much time and investment we've placed into these topics, right? Okay, so what's the first topic we were going to do?
Adjustments in sparring with Yod Kun Pan.
Really? Oh, I thought. Okay.
You thought we were starting with something else?
I thought we were going to say. How about? Well, it's closely related to what else we're going to talk about, which is the danger of quitting or the habit of quitting.
Yeah, they segue together.
So which one should we go? Should we do the adjustments first? Okay, then you have to lead because I don't really know what's happening actually on the outside of this topic.
Background: I've been sparring an hour 6 days a week with Yod Kun Pan for almost a year.
I think it started in June.
Yeah, well, it's February, so it's coming up. So for a long time.
It's like 40 years in the Bible.
In dog years, this is like 40 years. So I spar an hour every morning with Yod Kun Pan, who is the elbow hunter of 100 Stitches. He's a golden age, possibly the best elbow.
Not even possibly.
Definitely the best elbow fighter ever. He held the Rajadamnern and Lumpini titles simultaneously, which is crazy.
And we have a shirt that celebrates his awesome career.
He's also in the Muay Thai Library, so you can get a taste of what his technique is like, but also like what kind of person he is. He's unbelievably sweet and generous and very, he cares a great deal about how I'm learning, what I want to learn. He actually reminds me of Master K a little bit. My first teacher in America, Master K.
For those of you who followed Sylvie from the very beginning.
You can go watch these videos on YouTube as well. But Master K would like teach me something that I just would not get because he was teaching me like PhD level Muay Thai when I like couldn't even make an A type of thing. And he would just like sit there all night thinking, how can I teach this better because I wasn't getting it? This is Yod Kun Pan. Like he goes home and thinks all day to the next day, like what is Sylvie, like what is her problem with not being able to come in? What is this thing? Like how do I fix it? He's very, very generous in that way.
And let me say that just to pull out for a moment, part of the reason why you started sparring with him every single day was because of this Sylvie 3.0, the commitment you made right after COVID first hit Thailand.
Yeah, because fights were not going to be happening.
Everything got shut down, and we're like, well, what can we do if you can't fight for a year, let's say? Because you had been fighting 30 times a year, and it was a big chunk of your process and your growth was fighting. And so we're like, we're going to make these commitments to just transforming you over a year, growing eyes. And a big chunk of that is sparring instead of fighting. And we were very lucky. Yod Kun Pan is almost your size. Like he's not a large man. He is an incredible fighter and a generous teacher, as you said. And he was at the time living next door to Petron Room gym. And so we were like, oh my God, let's just lock onto this. So if you're not following regularly, this started around June, maybe, and it's been more or less every day.
Yeah.
And now what we're talking about is recent adjustments that are starting to make with this process, right?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah. Where do I begin? The thing with sparring with someone like Yod Kun Pan, like, people have gym mates who they spar with, and Karahat has said to me that you need to have people who are better than you, not as good as you, bigger than you, smaller than you. Like, you need all kinds of partners in order to get this kind of like mosaic of experience, which 100%. And there are a lot of people who are incredibly lucky who in their gyms do have sparring partners, like a range of sparring partners that they can play with. I don't have that, and I've almost never had that. So taking someone like Yod Kun Pan as my sparring partner, who is a golden age, incredible fighter, now in his early 50s, he brings a quality of real violence. Even though he's not hurting me and he knows how to control himself, he brings a quality of real violence that I don't know that like gym partners can do that anymore.
It's like an oh shit factor, which you feel like every 30 seconds or something.
Yeah.
What is that? Let's take a moment. Because if you haven't stood in front of Sagat, which you have, if you haven't stood in front of Yod Kun Pan or other legends.
Or made eye contact with fucking Chmuok Pet or Wang Chinoy and you're like...
Yeah. What is that thing? Because it's not aggression.
It's dominance rather than aggression, but it's
it's not like I'm gonna kick your ass dominance.
I was actually talking to Kevin about this on the way back from the first session we had with Wang Chinoy the first session we put in the Muay Thai Library. I'm a huge fan of Wang Chinoy, and I was very, very, very afraid of training with him for the Muay Thai Library because I find him very scary.
In video clips.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd never met him before. When I met him, I wouldn't call him sweet. He's very funny and friendly. He's not sweet, but he's very personable. He was not as intimidating and scary as I thought he was going to be. But this quality that's in his fightings is in his person as well, which is basically the dude who like comes in with a gun, puts it on the table, and he's like, we're gonna have a conversation, but there's a gun on the table. Who knows what could happen? You're just kind of like, now I'm just really nervous. That's what these guys have, is they just kind of like, there's just a gun on the table all the time. With Yod Kun Pan, he uses violence as like his medium of his art. It's like using oil paint or something. Like what he does uses violence. That's what his quality or his actual like method or element is.
What's his style?
It's his style, and it's not extractable. like you cannot do Yod Kun Pan stuff without that vein of violence in it. In the same way that when Diesel Noi gets going, it's a thresher or nothing. Like there's no like bow bow Diesel Noi. It's just he's super crazy. And like with Karahat, it's just you've suddenly entered into some kind of like mercury like sand situation. So sparring with him is incredibly emotionally difficult. Like it's physically difficult because I'm using power or I'm getting hit or like whatever. The thing is that there's physical difficulties in sparring in general, but the emotional difficulty of sparring with someone like Yod Kun Pan all the time and for an hour at a time is really intense. So some of the adjustments that we've been making very recently.
Well, first, the reason why there are adjustments is COVID swung through again, and Yod Kun Pan had gone to Royette, his hometown, Royette, right? And was
Gym's closed for a month, so there's no training.
Gyms were closed for a month, so everything, all the sparring stopped.
Yep.
So when you guys started like a week ago or so. So when everything started picking up again, there was this reflection, this time to think, well, how can we get more out of this maybe? Would that be fair to say?
It would be incredibly incomplete to say. Yeah.
Well,
it was,
add,
what I
fill
was,
in the
what I was
holes.
actually getting to when you added that in was that these adjustments are taking into account this emotional and mental tax or cost. So I was just redlining every single morning, and I have my regular training on top of this. So there's like, this is not like the only thing I do in the day. And it was taking a pretty huge impact on me. And so we were thinking like, how do we continue doing this, but like just change the recipe, change the balances so that it's like more, not only sustainable, but so that you're getting everything out of the,
Well,
so you can digest it.
That's the thing, is that there's this beautiful thing about Yod Kun Pan, which is that he paints with violence. So he's presenting a violence, a kind of violence that's not actual physical damage
right.
to you, in a way that doesn't maybe exist even in Muay Thai anymore. It's an old school thing, and so you're getting to adapt yourself to something very special. But there's other things about Yod Kun Pan that are just beautiful and unique about him, because he also has this fluid rhythm of movement and footwork.
Yeah, his footwork is incredible.
Very kind of like, he has a lightness to his movement that you can't feel when you're just scared shitless. So at least my thinking on trying to make adjustments is like, okay, let's on certain days, let's try to bring the violence quotient down so that these other really beautiful but more subtle elements of his style could kind of come in contact with you. And we were thinking about like you're becoming more aware of weight transfer.
Yeah, this is a really cool thing for me, is that like when you kind of have spent a lot of time in the water, or you've been kind of like growing eyes, as Kevin and I call it, things just kind of start to slow down. It's totally this like, people will contact me who are like, I'm so stressed in sparring, or like I'm on my third fight and I'm still not calm. And I'm like, I'm on 267 and I'm still not very calm. But it is like, it's this incremental, like things just start to slow down. You start to be able to like breathe while you're moving and doing something. And this is something that I feel is one of the big gifts from almost a year of this work. And I've written about this many times, that like training exhausted is really important. You can work in the gym for 2 hours and really it's the last 2 minutes that give you the growth. I could not feel what I feel now 8 months ago. It took 8 months of grinding and having a really hard time.
Yeah.
That now I'm still getting my ass handed to me, but I can feel where my weight is while that's happening, or I can feel what the next strike is if I'm gonna like push back against the wave.
Why feeling where your weight is because where your weight is determines which strikes or blocks can be executed. That generally, because the next thing you do is usually shift your weight to execute a strike. if you don't know where your weight is, you actually don't know what strike you can throw.
Yeah, and just even having that awareness takes a lot of experience and is incredibly valuable. It reminds me of all the work I've done in Vipassana, in that when I was spending 3 days at the meditation retreat, and I would meet with this monk to talk about what my experience was like. On like my third day, like the last day before I left, I was like, there are times I'm practicing and I know it's not right. That's okay that it's not right. And he was so happy, like clapped his hands together, and he was like, yes, just knowing it's not right, but not judging that it's not right, not being like, how do I get back on the rope? Like not this like strain of how do I be more mindful, just simply like, yeah, that was not mindful, versus like, this is mindful kind of thing. Is that just knowing where your weight is light years ahead of not having any idea and just being kind of like blasted. So for the non-Buddhist, non-Vipassana version, it's the G.I. Joe, knowing is half the battle. Like, now
I don't even know that. Is that from the movie? Or?
Now you know, and knowing is half the battle.
Oh, okay.
That's how they ended like every cartoon.
Oh, it's a cartoon?
Yeah.
Okay. Just as to step out into larger ideas for a second, for some people who don't know who Yokumpan is and don't know what we're referring to, they think, oh, what is the problem? Everybody knows in Thailand, sparring is super technical, super light, and it's all San Chai going ta 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 ta, all touching. This is not true.
No.
Yes, you do see videos of it. Yes, it is a part of sparring in Thailand, but we've seen sparring which is full-on knockout sparring, fight simulation sparring, and everything in between. So when we're talking about what the sparring that right now Yokumpan is doing is this kind of like, it's not full power, but it's full emotional dominance, right? And there is real attempts to own and dominate the space. It's not like flick, 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 flick,
Yes.
right? So what we've been trying to think about is on some days to do kind of, to take the temperature down so that other elements can read in. And I'm kind of interested in this because this is the second day you've done it, right? We're thinking maybe like 2 days a week to go bow bow soft, 3, who knows? But to have this option of kind of like dial it down, dial it up. One of the things Sylvie really wants to do more in her life is to be the master of her own training. Like, I'm going to train these techniques, not these. I'm going to be spending this time on the bag, not whatever. Like, basically to create her own path. And if you give yourself a gear shift in your sparring choice, that gives you the ability to modulate and monitor what you're experiencing. Rather than just be like, I need an easy day. Rather, an easy day followed by 3 hard days might be a good thing to do. Let me see, maybe I can do that.
Yeah.
But we've run into a little bit of a problem with even establishing what a bow bow day is. So this is interesting to me.
This is this is the way we've been talking about this, because we're trying to explain Yokumpan and what it's like sparring with someone like him. It comes off a little bit one-sided. I give back a lot in sparring. So there are times where the violence is completely being brought back by me. There are days where I'm kind of on a little bit of a upper edge. Like a lot of the exchanges are like, I got that one, you have one, I come back, like this kind of thing. So we talked about this in another Muay Thai Bones episode, but it's this like tiger energy that doesn't actually feel good. It's like the were tiger.
Yeah, that was a good episode.
And so the like kind of synopsis of that is that like meeting that energy, like actually having the violence or having the dominance or having the qualities that are necessary to like meet that doesn't necessarily feel good. Like it's a Jekyll and Hyde monstrous Hulk in the Hulk stage. Like it's not a like lovely
Banner
feeling.
doesn't like being Hulk.
No. So part of my redlining, like part of what's so hard is not just that I'm getting my ass kicked all the time, it's that I have to go into these were tiger states, and it's hard and painful and maybe like distortive in some ways. So pulling the bao in, the like gentle, bring it down, like don't have to get into that, be a little bit more like just move, feel the rhythms. It's even when it's super violent like that, it's still playful in the way that like tigers
Well, I haven't
play
been
or
around.
something.
I haven't even seen what has been happening. But yesterday you came home and you're like, that was very difficult. You said you gasped completely, which somebody would not.
Yeah,
Let's
start
just
again.
start and stop.
So continuing the thought that I was very, very surprised. Yesterday was my first day of introducing this, like, let's have really light days. Usually Yod Kun Pan is completely covered in padding in order to allow for this, like, full power strikes.
We're talking about, we modified shin guards to cover his thighs. He's
so
got
that
a
I could
belly
leg
pad.
kick.
We got a max protect, like Hannibal Lecter. Headgear from Fairtex that he actually really likes.
Yeah.
It has like a metal plate in front
Yeah.
of his face.
Elbow pads, big gloves, shin guards. Like, he looks like a transformer. Like, he's
Yeah, he
just
does.
completely covered. It's kind of like those, like, attack dogs or, like, self-defense classes where people are all padded out. It's kind of like that. He can't move as well as, or as freely as he'd like to with all that equipment in the same way that anyone who has sparred with or without shin guards, fought with or without shin guards, can, like, feel that difference. But so yesterday, to introduce this idea of let's go lighter, I was like, don't put the headgear on, don't put the belly pad on. Like, I'm not going to hit you hard. We'll just kind of like move and go light. And he was like, yes, I can be more free. I can move better. And I had to keep reminding myself that because he's not wearing this stuff, he can move better. So it's not like I'm shittier. It's like he took the weight off.
Yeah.
You know? Like he took the parking brake off or whatever. But what was really surprising to me is how exhausting going lighter was. Like, it was really tiring. We had discovered or like considered that maybe one of the reasons I'm so sore after my fights, aside from fighting giants all the time, is that you're just tense. Like, your muscles are tense all the time from like the pressure. And going softer actually made me more tense.
Which is amazing.
Because there's like more time
that come
between
from?
things, or like my distance was not durning as hard, or like whatever these things are. Like,
You couldn't cover things with aggression.
yeah, and then like I have this habit of when I'm trying to be relaxed, my hands just come down and he's just elbowing me, popping me like, don't bring your hands down. And so there's this like keeping your hands up, but not tight up, but like relaxed up, that like chart chai on a hanger kind of thing. It's like, it actually is like if you're like a foxtrot specialist and then you like pull it down to a waltz tempo, your body doesn't do those things. It's not like I'm a dancer, I can do anything. Like, it's, you have to get used to different
Yeah, and that's part of
rhythms.
the idea here, is to find these other rhythms, because ideally in a fight, you need many vocabularies, different tempos, so you can change tempo and your opponent can't.
Yeah.
You find the tempo that your opponent doesn't like, and then you go walk through that tempo for a little bit.
Yeah.
But you found it to be stressful, and
Yeah.
also it doesn't sound like I haven't even been there. He sounds like he doesn't even actually fully get it.
He does and he doesn't. Like, he's actually kind of into it in some ways. He's like, oh, this is a very good idea. Like, you can really kind of feel your...
He said your vocabulary went up.
My like striking vocabulary went up. He liked that I was using more footwork, which I don't think was true today. I think that was true yesterday, and not so much today. I felt very still and like flat-footed and grounded today. But I would like throw a strike or something, and there's a correction that's like, don't throw it slow, throw it light. Like, a lot of times when you're trying to control your power, you kind of like pull in a way that makes it like, which is just not, it's like if you're trying to throw a ball for someone to hit with a bat, it's not even going to make it to them. Like, you have to have a little bit
There
of...
is a weird thing that when you throw a proper soft strike, by my judgment, it's slow and it speeds up at the end.
It accelerates.
It
just on the
accelerates.
edge.
It's like the accent on a word.
Yeah.
Like a whoop. So you go whoop, boom, bump, boom. So you feel that little thing, that little sting and contact point. Whereas everybody does it the opposite way. They start out normal and then they slow it down as they get to the body, which is totally the wrong thing to be doing in a fight. Because you don't want to ever be pulling, like hitting the brakes as you approach somebody.
Or you can do the Karahat style and just not fully extend it. Like there are times when he'll just put his hip like this, and I'm like, I would have.
I think that's a bad habit, actually.
Killed by that. It's another way to do it.
Yeah.
But I forgot what we were talking about, just how exhausting being light is. Oh, so he has this complaint. He's like, don't go slow. Like, don't distort your technique in order to be soft. So he would tell me to go harder, like kick him harder. And so I could on some things like this, but I'm very conscious of not punching him too hard because he's not wearing the headgear, and he had said that he gets a little bit rocked sometimes. So it's like learning how to control your own body, like learning how to pull things without like distorting things is really difficult. But he seems to understand some of the benefits of going light, but then he will totally like amp it up. Like it's his engine just
starts going.
When you put the dog out on the yard, it's gonna zoom. Like that's what the yard is for.
Totally.
So today, a couple of times I was like, no, really, like bring it back down. It was a little bit of a like adjusting back down, but that.
This is also another thing is you have to learn how you're a very like accommodating, kind person and shy. I think you need to learn how to actually speak up and verbally control the environment. A lot of people are like this. They don't want to say that's too hard. Like it's probably women especially in gyms.
Yeah.
Like you actually can say things that control. You don't just have to control it with your fists.
Yeah, but it's complicated.
Okay.
Not only because I'm very shy and I don't like telling people what to do in any way, or especially someone who I respect. I would never be like,
totally.
Do this. I'm the boss. Blah, blah, blah. It's not like my style at all. But there's also we have this complicated thing about introducing the idea of going light because timing matters. Like we don't want it to seem like it's in response to something. So when I'm telling him bow bow, like bring it back down, I don't want it to seem like he just did something wrong. I want it to be like, no, we just kind of got a little bit outside of the lines. Let's pull it back in. I don't want it to be like, you did something wrong and now I'm sulking and want to put it like this. So it's like, I agree. It's a very complicated, like sculpting, molding situation that actually, I don't know if you're ready to segue, but it segues a little bit into this idea of I need to be able to make adjustments, but I need to be very honest about those adjustments because I do not want to be making them in order to like make it easier for myself. I don't want to be responding to my own weakness either. Like we, in another Muay Thai Bones podcast and myself personally in a video, have talked about how the menstrual cycle and the hormones fluctuating can actually change the brain and completely change your experience of pain, fear, what facial expressions mean. Like, it is a different brain experience. I have what I call rawness, which I just feel like a raw nerve. It's both physical, like my pain threshold is reduced, but it's very emotional. Like, I just cannot. There were days when Ajahn Gimyu, who's 78 years old, back when I was doing pads with him at Petrungrung a long time ago, he would just yell at me. Like, he would be like, no, you're going too fast. And I would just want to cry. And it's like, don't yell at me. And when you're that kind of raw, I don't want to be responding to that untruthfully. Like, I want to acknowledge that I'm in a raw state, but I don't want it to be like, I have to take the week off because I'm feeling.
Well, part of training isn't just like training hard, but you're training yourself into how do I want to respond when I feel tired, when I feel depressed, when I feel defeated, when I feel great. Like when I feel these things, what's the groove that I want to fall into? Which is, so you're a different person many times during the month, maybe hormonally, but just even psychologically, you're not always the same person. In a fight, you are not always the same fighter.
Yeah.
Depends on your opponent or what happened 30 minutes before you got in the ring. So you basically are learning to train yourself in various states of advantages and disadvantages. And that rawness is a very big one.
I did think to myself today, I was like, I would hate to be fighting with this feeling.
Yeah.
I could fight
Yeah.
and
And
probably
you probably
have
have. You
many
probably
times,
have, yeah.
but it would be very unfortunate. And I also had to stop and think to myself a couple of times, like, my filter was off. Like, I totally had this, like, I'm just being overwhelmed and feeling awful and all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't tend to be like Yodkun Pon's having a bad day. You know, like, there's no, like, well, some of this stuff is affecting him very strong because he's having a tired day or a not great day or whatever the thing is. Instead, it's just this, like, I'm awesome today, and then today I suck. What's wrong with me? It's like, they're two people.
Yeah.
Like, so I have to be in this idea of quitting, this, like, if you're going to start bringing things down, if you're going to train shorter, if you're going to go lighter, if you're going to
Well, are we segueing
reduce
into a
time.
different topic?
I'm just saying that you have to make decisions about why you're doing that and what the purposes of that are, and not have it be a response.
Okay. Well, maybe this is a point where we start and stop.
Okay.
Because we'll go to that. Go to that topic,
Okay.
which is closely related,
Yeah.
right? Okay. So this
You
is
introduce this
This
one.
is topic number 2, closely related to where we just ended. Topic number 1. This is a very interesting topic to me because this is something that I played a large role in shaping, I think, as you went forward and fought this incredible number of fights and trained literally. I don't know that there's anyone who's trained in Thailand like you for, I don't know, has it been 7 years, 8 years?
In Thailand?
Yeah.
It's coming up on 9.
9 years. Honestly, Sylvie took, other than like a broken hand or something, or the flu or something, you trained pretty much non-stop for at least the first 7. Like, Thais trained very hard, but they seasonally, they take off, they go on. They take off, they go on. Sylvie trained unbelievably hard, out-trained the gym for 7 years, and sometimes out-trained 2 gyms. Like, was going to one gym and not telling them that she was at another gym. So the relentlessness of your training was really historic. And we kind of had this philosophy where we're like, don't stop, because it's really hard to start. It's like when you're on an ultra, you don't want to sit down and rest for 5 minutes, because then how the hell do you get out of the chair?
Yeah.
And so there was this like incredible grind. And one of the rules we followed as it started to like become a thing, like it had its own momentum, and we're kind of like, well, how do we even understand what rest means, or why rest, or whatever? We came up with a rule, which was, don't decide to stop, like not run today or take a rest day. Do not decide to stop based on how you feel right now. That if you're not going to run, decide the night before.
Yeah, there's no, like, waking up and I don't feel like it.
The reason why there's no waking up and I don't feel like it is a really bad habit, because what will end up happening is your body will start sending you I don't feel like it messages, because it wants to pull you down into a homeostasis, and you're trying to climb up. So you're going to keep, no matter where you set the bar, high, low, there's the governor theory in running, which is, I think it's 80% of your run, you're gonna, no matter whether your run is like 3 miles or 100 miles, at the 80% mark, your brain is gonna start being like,
I can't do it.
I can't do it. And it's like, it actually, the theory is that it actually constructs a arc in your activity, and it's like about 80%, it's time to stop.
Time to reserve.
Time to
Yeah.
reserve. And so it felt very dangerous because of what you were doing to at any time be like, I don't feel like it, I'm gonna stop. So we built in this kind of like rule, which is you can take a day off, you can not run, you could not do anything if you want, but do it the night before.
Decide the night before.
Decide the night before, or even before that. And it makes you take perspective on what you're doing. And it also means that you do the things that you say you're going to do.
Right.
With COVID hitting, and I'm sure so many people have run into this, because whatever your regimen was before, if you were active, it was disrupted. So you had this principle that you go by, but everything got interrupted. Like Yo Kung Pan went back to Royette, or for a time you couldn't do pad work. And so the like keep on the path and only say no, you're not going to do something the night before kind of got jumbled. And now you're trying to find your compass with this for the first time in your life. I don't know, in the last 9 years, have you like really taken things down because there just wasn't the work to do, unless you were just going to train yourself. You stopped running every day, which was something that running usually makes you very balanced and happy, but it's also hard. And I'm like, this was the first time in maybe 8 or 9 years where you're not running every day. And so you're trying to find what we were just talking about, like this bao bao thing with Yo Kung Pan, you not wanting to be like, I don't want to say go bao bao because right now I feel like I can't handle it.
Yeah, it's got to be a like, hey, tomorrow it's going to be
Yes.
light.
Yeah.
Tomorrow don't bring your headgear or whatever the thing is. It can't be
I
a
think
like.
you should take your gloves off even, maybe. Honestly, I think it would calm him down a little.
I'm actually super stoked. It's like a little bit of a side thing. He's been wearing elbow pads for many, many months now. And again, he is the elbow hunter of 100 stitches. This dude's elbows can come from anywhere. They're incredible. They're relentless. He was really stoked to put the elbow pads on to be able to start like elbowing and playing with them. He barely ever elbows me, like almost never. And I was kind of like, I don't really know how to ask about this or whatever. And whenever I would ask him about it, he's like, oh, I don't have the zhonghua, I don't have the rhythm for it because you're on me or whatever the thing is. Without the headgear and without the belly pad in the bao bao state where like everything's more fluid, I've been elbowed more times in the past 2 days than in the 8 months
They came
prior.
out.
Not only this, they are nice, like slicing elbows with the pad on, so I'm fine.
Well, so people know, just a little interruption, Kevin footnote, people in the West think elbows are knockout strikes. They're not in Thailand traditionally.
Knives aren't hammers.
They're not hammers. If you're knocking somebody out with your elbow, you're throwing it in a non-traditional way. There are power elbows in Thailand, of
yeah,
course.
if you hit the right spot, like on a
But
chin or
mostly like golden age elbowing is really like scalpel work. And Carhat was very good with this. Is that you want to like hit the bone. There's like bone parts.
as someone who has received many, many, many elbows that cut, there's this little like pop, like you can feel the pop.
Yeah.
And it's from just the edge just hitting or
It
slicing
takes
by.
great skill. It takes great
Yeah.
skill to not
But
hit somebody with a forearm.
that's what he's hitting me with, are these
Yeah.
little like, he's wearing the pad so it's not cutting me. If he did, I'd be okay with that. Be like, Yo Kung Pan did this to me. But I'm stoked about it, and he's not apologizing. Like the few times that he hit me with elbows prior to this, he's like, oh, sorry, and he doesn't stop to
You
apologize
came home
now.
with that, like, you have your like little treasures of the day, and
I'm
you're like,
stoked
he
about
didn't
this.
apologize for
Yeah.
ripping me.
Actually, the reason we got him the Hannibal Lecter headgear was because I had landed an upward elbow into his mouth that was actually damaging a little bit. I didn't knock his teeth out or anything, but I think I cut his like frenum or
Lip,
something.
yeah.
I got one of those today.
Oh yeah,
Bao bao.
you received it.
No, I gave it to
Oh,
him.
you gave it to him.
I was like, again. Get one warning shot.
So I want to hear from you, because we've figured out this way that works. We know, do not quit when you don't feel like it. Like, we just know you don't do that. And now you spent a month not following that golden rule hardcore. You were like blurring the edges because there wasn't a lot of work all the time and there wasn't anything pressing on you. What is it like for you reassembling yourself? Like, do you have to reinvestigate why you don't want to do something, or do you want to change the rule? It's no longer a golden rule. There's a rule and there's other
It's
rules.
so complicated.
Well, that's what we're podcasting about, because people struggle with this stuff. This is very hard for even somebody who's low level. Like, they're not a great fighter or anything, but they're trying to better themselves. They're trying to do things they don't want to do.
This is going to be the, like, you lose some people answer. So people who believe there's a Thai kick, right? Whatever. There are many, many, many Thai kicks. There are, like, so many different ways to do something. It's like saying that there's, like, some language example of, like, there's one way to say something where there's actually, like, 90 ways to say something.
There's one Italian pizza.
If you forget the word, you can actually talk around it, and people still know what you're talking about with this donut of never actually saying that word.
Yeah.
It's like, there's lots of variety. In my many, many, many years of learning not only technique, but context, attitude, dignity, etiquette, Thai etiquette, female foreigner in Thailand etiquette, being older than people, like, there's tons of variety that makes every single thing not cut and paste, this is how you do something, this is when you do something. I had a really hard time in the 9 years I've been here trying to spar, which is that when I spar with teenage boys. That's who's my size.
And
So-
sometimes a little bit under teen.
Yeah, rarely.
Yeah.
But
You're small. You're less than. You're 100 pounds.
yeah, but the point being,
Yeah.
that's a terrible emotional age. It's a
For
really
them.
shitty emotional
Yeah,
age.
yeah.
And if they have a strong female putting it on them, they will get made fun of. Like, it's not a, like,
You're also not sparring alone. You're sparring, like, with an audience. That's something that's very important in Thailand that Westerners don't think about as much.
right. But there's something in that that's muddier than what happens with boys, although boys experience it as well, which is that when you're young enough, when you're little enough, your emotions are not settled yet. And they cry. Like, the little boys cry all the time. And so it's like, okay, you cried too fast today, go calm down. Now you have to come back so that we toughen you up. You got beat up by this kid, so tomorrow we're going to put you against someone that you can gain confidence against. You were a bully today, tomorrow you get your ass kicked. Like, there's this kind of, like, shaping that happens in this emotional state of young boys.
In Thai gyms, like
Yes.
Thai Muays. Yeah.
Yeah. I had to learn that as an adult, which is difficult because I'm often smaller than the person that I'm working with. And if they become uncool, like if they actually start using their power, they're so much bigger than me, they can hurt me. Like, they have the capacity to hurt me. And at my size, I do not have the ability to necessarily
Well,
defend myself.
Early lesson. Was your nose broken twice?
3
By
times
off?
outside of fight, twice by off. Yeah.
Off, purposively breaking her nose with a knee, wasn't it?
I don't think he meant to break it.
Baby.
He meant to knee me in the face.
to
I don't
ha-
think he
to-
meant to break it.
Very technical. Held your head down, put a knee to your face. Whatever happens, I'm not involved. But because things got run away with
Right.
a little bit. So you literally have experienced this.
But so
like-
then I'm in this horrible position, which is that I have to learn to amp it up a little bit to defend myself, to, like, use a little bit of a shock knee that's like, I can hurt you too, calm the fuck down. I know we have young listeners. I'm sorry that I swear. You can calm someone down. You can be like, do you want it to amp or do you want it to come back down? And they're like, oh no, I'll bring it back down because they just got a little excited. There are some people who will bring it up. And it's very difficult because there's a part of you that wants to look to your trainer and be like, look at what a dick he's being. Like, I'm being cool. What's this problem? That's not usually how fighters are developed.
No.
It's a very unorthodox way of becoming a decent fighter. But at the same time, at my age and as a woman, I'm not rewarded for punishing my training partners. Like, if it becomes like nobody's really looking at it, like, we can kind of see that she's holding her own, but she's not amping it too much, then it's okay. If I lose my cool because they lost their cool, it's like, you're in your 30s. Like, what are you doing losing your cool with a 14-year-old? He's 14. That's fine.
That's what you do as a 14-year-old.
And you're like, no.
He's going to hurt me.
Also not cool. He's 60 kilos.
Yeah.
But all of that being the like background to, I have had to learn how to not only, I had to learn the lesson of protecting myself, that was correct.
Yes.
But then I also had to learn the lesson of, okay, you can protect yourself, now you have to be the bigger man. You have to be the like, do you want it to amp? No, we keep it down here.
Yeah.
Like you don't always fly off
You had
the
to
handle.
guide it, yeah.
Learn to kind of control it. Now I'm having to do this verbally in a like today I was incredibly raw. Today was like a 9 out of 10 raw day.
Oh, baby, that's very hard. I know, a 9 out of 10.
Usually on those days I do cry between rounds, but like quietly to myself, and I have a towel that I can just kind of like happily, you sweat so much, wiping your face is like normal. I did not cry between rounds today.
That's pretty incredible,
It's
actually.
pretty good. But so I was
not
trying to
cry.
gauge like to what degree is he actually not doing bow bow and it's like too much? Like to what degree is he wrong? And to what degree am I just hypersensitive to the entire situation?
Okay.
Where it's like if you have a sunburn, tepid water's awful,
Okay.
you know, because of your sensitivity.
Okay.
If you have like regular skin, you're like, oh, that's totally tolerable water.
Right.
Like he may have been acting completely tolerable today.
Okay.
But I'm like super raw. So in this like learning or being careful not to create a habit of quitting, I don't want to be like, take it way down because I feel horrible today. Because I'm going to have to fight in the condition that I'm currently in. And you can't
Right.
be like, excuse me, balmy, quit putting your hand in my face. I hate it. Like it's
But
not.
there is a thing, and we talked about this in the last Muay Thai Bones podcast, basically how Sanchai scripts out the fight in front of him in Thai fight. Basically, do you want to escalate?
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Are you gonna be
want to
cool?
go there?
No.
You're not gonna be cool. Okay. Here comes Lorenz Kenshin breakdown. Like, part of when you learn to control a sparring session, even if you're using your words, sometimes your words are, but sometimes it's your posture. Your words are executing the very thing you want to do in a fight, which is you need to control the fight space. You need to control the tempo. You need to make things be where you want them to be. And if you have to use your words because you're small or you're whatever it is, then you need to use them. Because a lot of this is about just being passive to awful things. Because
Yes,
you learn.
yes, yes, in a black and white world.
Yeah.
But
it's gradation.
I will say there is a degree to which the like having permission. I use this example a lot, which is like, Sylvie, how the hell do you do this? If I'm running and I want to stop or I want to slow down, I'm like, okay, keep this pace until that tree.
Yeah.
And by the time I get to the tree, I'm usually like, I still want to stop, I still want to slow down, but it's not that bad. I'll just pick another tree and run to that. So there's a little bit of that that's like, just go like this, in that giving yourself permission. I can stop, but I'm choosing not to.
Yeah.
Having permission to verbally be like, take it down,
Yeah.
mitigates what I've been trying very hard to not do, which as a woman is incredibly hard because patriarchy is for both men and women trained this way. This like, I can't verbally say you're being too much, take it down. So instead I have to non-verbally emote my sulking, pouting,
Control in
acting
this other
hurt,
way,
whatever the
yeah,
thing is
yeah.
that's like, if I could be like, this is too much, take it down, I'm far less inclined to like bury into myself and demonstrate how sad or frustrated or whatever I am.
Which
is good.
Fighterly.
Yes.
I mean, the fighting arts are masculinely coded.
Right,
So
so
you
it's-
have to display masculine strategies.
So it's
and
actually a little
qualities.
bit like I don't have to mime it for you because I could just be like, take it down. And then like the tree that you're running to, you're like, okay, I'll just pick another tree where it's like, I don't have to tell you to take it down yet.
Or you can be like, okay, I'll power through this round, but between rounds, I'm going to say something.
Yeah.
Or it
because
doesn't have to be-
honestly, a couple of times today I did say, like, take it down. And of the like 2 or 3 times I said it, I probably should have said it 6 or 7 times. Could have said it
Well, you just
40
started
times.
this. You've
I
just
know,
started,
but it's
yeah.
just
it's
like
the second day, really.
again, it's that like not wanting it to result in him feeling like he did something wrong, but rather
you have
like
to
let's make an
manage it.
adjustment.
Yeah. But I'm kind of interested in you focusing very hardcore on this you and Yokun Pan thing. I'm interested in how are you modulating when you want to quit, when you want to stop, because you're no longer in a kind of like infinite grind, calling things whether you're going to do them the night before golden rule setting anymore. Everything's very nebulous right now.
It's not that.
Well,
I'm
you
not,
don't
like-
run every day. Is that a choice?
Yeah, but we had made a decision I wasn't going to run every day a
Did
long
we?
time ago. Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember.
It was so that I could sleep more.
Okay, but so do you feel like you're still in the golden rule? Like you basically only don't do things if you decided well in advance?
There have been mornings where I had planned to run that
That's
I'm
what I
like,
thought.
no, because it's raining, no,
Yeah.
because I just like slept 2 minutes the night before. Like,
That's what I'm talking about. I'm not saying those were wrong choices, but I'm saying like that's when you start getting into the slippery slope of quitting becomes a habit. Not that those were wrong choices, but when you no longer have the golden rule, then and you have exceptions, it feels like it's dangerous because then when do you stop? And how do you stop?
I agree.
Yeah. But I'm curious, how did it?
But there's also, I think, when you have so much on the table, you have to have priorities of what can come off the table first, right?
Okay.
So, like, if I decide that, like, no matter what, I decided last night I'd set my alarm to run, so I have to run
Right.
no matter what happens in the night, no matter if I wake up with my stomach hurting, like whatever the thing is. If I run, it's the first thing in my day
Right.
that makes every single thing, which is lots of things after that, difficult for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
That one is something like a plate near the edge of the table that I'm like, that one can go because I don't want.
Yeah, but it's not which plates do you take off the table. It's like it used to be, don't take any plates off the table just because you don't like them right now.
Right.
The night before or the week before, you could be like, that plate's been bugging me. No more.
100%.
Yeah.
And
But I'm saying, are we still in that area? But I don't know.
No. But there's a reason we've moved away from that, which is that it served its purpose for the many, many years that I was doing that. And now having what?
Yeah, but I understand what it did in the past. I'm like, what is happening now because things are more nebulous? So what is the guideline for you? Like
I do
Like you told
not
me.
in general like show up to training and be like, I'm actually not feeling good, I'm gonna not do things. Like I end up doing mostly what
Okay.
I was planning on doing.
You don't understand my question.
I don't.
That's okay.
Rephrase
That's all
it
right.
because I don't understand.
There's been a change.
Yes, I understand.
Which
this.
means, what does that change involve?
It means, honestly, it's almost only running.
Okay. We're not communicating, so
I don't
it's
understand
okay.
what your question
It doesn't. There's no. It's not a good podcast
What is-
to like pound a question over and over again.
What it's
So
like,
let's move on to another
What it's
thing.
like is that for many years I was being toughened up at WKO sparring with P Mutt, right?
Yeah.
And it was just endure it.
Yeah.
Like just even though it was like so useless in terms of like actually developing any kind of skill, it was making me very tough. Like
Right.
needed that toughness. We got to a point where it's like you don't need to be toughened up anymore, and now it's actually like pushing.
Well, it was
In a bad
It
way.
was making you feel bad.
It was making me feel bad, but it was also making me worse. It was making me feel shitty about myself, and so I was becoming kind of
Yeah.
like hesitant and like
Yeah, it
pulling
wasn't.
back.
It wasn't for the better.
And so the like, you do what you say you're going to do all the time, no exceptions, no changes, had its shaping purpose. And now in the like, Sylvie wants to be the captain of her own boat. She wants to have decisions in how she trains, all of these different things.
Yeah.
The ability to have some kind of plasticity, some kind of malleability, that is now the like,
Yes, but does
benefit.
it involve right now? I don't feel like doing that. I'm not going to do it right now. this is the part that I'm like unclear on,
To be
which I
100
find very interesting.
To be 100% honest, yes, because there are times I wake up and I'm like, not going to run. So
And
that is what that is.
And you've voiced to me that you also have a fear of developing a habit of quitting because of this.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, how does one deal with this? In the past, we dealt with it with golden rules. How does one deal with it when there are now exceptions to the golden rule? I'm saying you don't know, but you're exploring this.
I'm going to have to
So
figure it
I'm
out
like,
because I had thought to myself that with this particular thing, we train 6 days a week. So maybe I pick 3 days that will be light and 3 days that will be hard. Or
Yeah.
like 4 and 2, I don't know, something like this. And I was like, it would be good to do a bulk of the days like that rather than like alternating, like light, hard, I think would be a nightmare.
So you get a feeling for it.
And I'm like, that's a way to kind of have the like, I made a decision, I stick to it. Tomorrow is a light day, today is a hard day, like whatever the thing is like this.
Yeah.
Rather than, oh, it's a light day, but I actually feel super good, so I'm going to go hard.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you
yeah,
take it down.
exactly.
Or like, today's a hard day, but fucking hell, it sucks, I'm going to go light. It's like, no, you get through today.
And then you think to yourself, based on your experience of sticking to what you decided, and then you reformulate for the next week.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that worked out pretty good. Or 3 days light, the third day didn't really hit me
It's
right.
hard, though, because it actually takes more data than like 1 week to know
Well, but
whether it worked or
But
not.
you don't have to change either. You
Yeah.
can be like, okay, gathering data, let's do it again this week. But the idea is you're still not making those adjustments based on how you feel right now. You're like committed to the decisions you made based on how you have felt
Yeah,
and how you think you might feel.
yeah.
Something like that.
Something like
but
that.
It's a very interesting thing because so many people's regimens have been disrupted for the last year.
Yeah.
Because of COVID.
And keep getting reshuffled.
And there's a feeling like, oh, I just want to get back to my grind. But there is some way like, almost like you can't necessarily even get back to your grind.
Yeah.
Like maybe another variant comes in another 6 months and gym's shut down again. And it's like, how do you maintain the discipline, focus, rule-driven spirit of what you're doing when you don't necessarily have full control over things? And you always have that like haunting feeling like, I do not want to develop a habit of quitting.
Yeah.
So I don't know the answer, but it feels like a weird place because also when you would chain yourself to your regimens, it stabilized you in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Like the very hard work simplified your life.
Yeah.
And you like pulling heavy loads. So it's like, how does one balance the freedom of choice, shaping your own thing, wanting to stop, and also needing heavy loads? Like, that's a very interesting time.
Yeah, in the way that like a cattle dog is super like food motivated, I'm very like obligation motivated.
Yeah.
Like,
And then there's also like, not to even point at anyone, but in our past we've seen older fighters who are like, oh, we still have a couple minutes.
Yep.
We've seen older fighters who are like, I don't need really anyone to train me. I know how to train myself.
yeah, and you're like, now.
Yeah, but they don't really train. You're like, this is your training? And it's like, yeah, you know, and yeah, you worked hard, but like Thai fighters are very much like this. People training for Thai fight, just running and
Yeah.
a little bit of clinching. But it's like the master of your own ship sometimes also feels like it dissipates the focus of what you're doing in a weird way. And so there's that fear also, because we've seen so many older fighters that are being like that.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, they're doing what they used to do, but they're not really.
Yeah, or like,
I don't know if you're thinking about the same people I'm thinking about.
We're probably thinking about the same people, but in terms of the like, you have to change, you have to adjust, you have to like, you know, transform. That's the whole point. It's a transformation. So what worked or what was your focus 5 years ago isn't necessarily what your
Totally.
focus is now. But there's like there's kind of a like honesty in understanding that like what made it hard to get up 5 years ago is what makes it hard to get up now. Like that part didn't change.
Doesn't change.
So like,
The exact same thing. It's almost like that same thing, like when you just don't want to go to school. As
oh, I
like
had senioritis real bad. Yeah.
Don't want to
Cat's
out.
on the bed. Not
That
today. Nope.
Doesn't change. Doesn't
Frost on the window. Not this month.
change. Okay, that was a good segment. Okay, this is my topic.
This is Kevin's topic.
I feel like we went down a deep Sylvie tunnel, which you don't usually love. Talking about your training,
As a
your
natural
motivations.
extrovert, I love talking about myself.
What movie was that?
It was a show. I can't remember.
What show was that?
The one with the like baby voice. I can't remember.
Oh my God, she was so funny. That was a very funny comedy. Okay. Oh man, this is one of Kevin's giant topics. I'm very excited about this and passionate about it for years, really. I'm hoping you get into it too. Because I don't want this to be like solo Kevin talk. Come on, baby, get into it. All right. This is typical Muay Thai Bones conversation.
Buckle in.
Buckle in. All right. I'm going to approach this from a kind of like colonialist political concept.
Fun.
Baby, come on.
It'll be good. Go.
Which is the idea that Western nations, a broad idea, Western nations go to non-Western nations, kind of extract their resources, their natural resources.
Colonialism.
Well, there's many means of doing it. Capitalism, you don't have to have a colonialist political framework, but generally, you extract the natural resources of a country or continent and put them into a marketplace, your marketplace. And very often this is like mining something or natural gas or something, but you extract it from where it was and you put it into packages like shipping containers or whatever, and then you move it into warehouses and then you put it into your marketplace where you use it. This broadly has always felt like a moral, ethical dimension to anybody, including us from the West, who comes with passion for Muay Thai and wants to learn it and then bring it out.
Appropriation.
In some way. Like a lot of it is very well-meaning. It's not like stealing somebody's oil or minerals, but it's the whole process of very often having a passion for something and then wanting to export it and back to your home country. And it's a very complicated thing because Muay Thai has gotten to a place where it's really not sustainable within the country of Thailand itself, in the sense that it's losing popularity. And for some time, part of the reason why Muay Thai has pride for the Thai people is that people around the world value it. They come here to train it. They come here, they teach it elsewhere. They admire it. It reflects well on the Thai people, especially since Deckers. Like before that, maybe not so much. So the Western influence and excitement towards Muay Thai is also part of its value to the people of Thailand. So when you export Muay Thai and you get other people outside of Thailand interested in it, it actually benefits. It doesn't just take. It benefits the Muay Thai of Thailand. Maybe if Muay Thai is being like trained in gyms, those people develop a passion for the culture. They want to come to Thailand, learn from the source. There's a lot of good things. It's not a one-way thing. But part of the moral compass of what's going on, which is really interesting to me, is the way that Muay Thai has been exported and then learned, transformed, and then learned in other countries, extracted in a certain regard. I'm going to leave to the side occasions where actual Thais move to other countries and teach the sport. Some of them not as legendary as they like to profess that they are, but sometimes legends themselves, like Putpad Noi was probably, from what we understand, was probably a very, like, he's one of the 5 best, greatest fighters ever, probably was a very important influence in teaching Muay Thai in France.
Yeah, and France is very good with Muay Thai. Like,
not accidentally.
Not accidental.
So, so I'm rambling, baby.
Yep.
You're not supposed to agree with me when I say these
You're
things.
getting to it.
Well, part of the reason why I'm rambling on these larger ideas is what's interesting is how they connect up with larger ideas. Okay, so break, start over, enter from a different pathway. The Western mind generally is very mechanistic. It thinks of things in terms of isolated parts that move in patterns and according to fixed dynamics.
It's like an assembly.
An assembly of some kind. And so when the Western mind looks at the Muay Thai of Thailand, largely being very broad, it looks at parts moving. So when Muay Thai is copied, duplicated, extracted from Thailand, there just is a fundamental perceptual bias, which is Westerners want to locate the important mechanical movements and then bring them out, extract them, remove them from the context of what they were in, and you get this in an extreme version where you're like, let's take the Muay Thai round kick, which is just like your hip moves here, your foot goes here, and the kick comes out like this, and now let's put it in MMA, which is mixed martial arts, which is kind of broadly thought at some point early on as like putting parts together, like borrowing from this one, Frankensteining. Why am I getting stuck on this reef? This mechanistic mind of the West, which atomizes a living thing and extracts pieces of it and locates the important elements, is a very powerful trend. I think it's changing partly because of our work in Muay Thai Library. We shoot long-form videos of great Thais teaching their techniques over an hour instead of a little tiny piece of something. And I think people are starting to get the broader context of a technique having to do with a style and an energy and how it's deployed. But there's been many decades already where Muay Thai has left Thailand in pieces. It left in pieces also with kickboxing in Japan, although they actually brought Thais to teach people how to kick and whatnot. And a very large part of this is the entire gym system in the West, which is often run by that the people teaching Muay Thai historically did not actually know Muay Thai quite well. They were not fluent in it.
Right.
Sometimes they would come to Thailand for a year, 2 years, fight for a couple years. These are not people fluent. It would be like, I went to Japan for 2 years.
Right.
But I'm not fluent in Japanese. So very often people that ran gyms located important techniques that were connected to them that they learned, and then they export those mechanical elements into the gym that they opened or that they teach at. And I think this is even further complicated by the way that Western gyms have to run, which is you have students teaching other students, which is drilling, right?
Yeah. The entire structure.
Thank you for jumping in.
The entire structure of a Western gym is so anathema to the structure of Thai pedagogy.
Yeah.
It can't be the same. Like, you are not making money off of your fighters in America.
And most of them no. And you also cannot grow a school. You cannot run a Western gym like a Thai gym,
No.
like a true Kai Muay, like a local Kai Muay, which is just like most of these kids training for free, and then you're going to make money on their fights. And
they do
and they
train
play
each
to
other in gyms, but it's basically just
Not-
an age hierarchy of like, you're 13, so you hold pads for the 6-year-old, but it's not
Yeah,
instructing.
No, baby, I hear what you're saying.
But in the West, it's not instructing either. It's just you hold pads
yeah,
for
but
each
it's
other.
memorized patterns.
I'm not disagreeing with that part.
Yeah.
I'm saying that in the same way that people are like, sparring in Thailand is all light, you can't say that there is only a crew-student relationship in
Well, there's not
Thai
a
gyms.
crew-student relationship at all almost in Thai gyms, other than a respect.
Yeah, the
one.
power structure
The
of it.
power structure, but the idea of an authority figure who holds the knowledge and then mechanically instructs everyone in it to then approximate this knowledge
Mm-hmm.
is not how gyms work. We were shocked. I was shocked how Petron how little correction. There's so much more correction now
Yep.
because it's been influenced by Western concepts of what a Westerner wants. But organically, there's not a lot of correction in Thai gyms. And
Well, it was very slow cook. Like the instruction came very long term,
yeah,
not like a stop and correct kind of thing.
yeah, and there was not like, don't practice a mistake. It will be so ingrained into your muscle memory and your nervous system, and you'll never stop doing it. That concept doesn't exist in Thailand.
Nope, can't turn your foot there. You'll get a leg kick.
Okay, but this is not really, to me, about ragging on the Western approach. The fact of the matter is, the Western approach and its commercial market, like the very structure of how Muay Thai is disseminated, respected, learned, made money off of, has to do with this mechanical duplication of techniques. That someone who's not fluent, probably not fluent in Muay Thai, might be a good fighter, might have some, brings techniques to a gym and then simplifies them and turns them into drills that then get disseminated to people who know less and approximate them and correct them. And then they train them often against each other in drills. So basically you have an incredible abstraction of techniques by the very structure of learning and dissemination. This is so far from what Muay Thai is. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing even. I'm saying we have to pay attention to the transformation. It's a necessary transformation. I remember Brian Popejoy, who tries to do traditional stuff, but also teaches with drills and things. He's like, how much do you want my gym to be like a Thai gym? Do you want dogs chasing you on your run?
Did you say that?
Yes. And he's making a joke that's also quite real.
It's very real. It's very good.
Very real. But you know what? Dogs chasing you on your run is part of Muay Thai. A small part. It's part
But
of.
it also cannot be extracted. Like you can't
you
sleep on the
can't.
floor and that makes you a great
No.
Muay Thai fighter. You have to have the
No.
entire.
And you cannot start a dog colony down the road from your gym so that these wild dogs in the parking lot might chase you.
It's got out of hand.
But this isn't really about a judgment to me of good or bad in the sense of like, should this be happening? Rather, this has been happening for decades, and part of it is a much deeper thing, which is just a Western concept of how to look at something as a mechanism. This is one reason why many Westerners encountered frustration when coming to Thailand when they weren't being instructed, because they're like, tell me the moving parts. Where do I put my foot? Should my elbow be high or low? Thais do not think mechanically like a machine.
Yeah, I'll say that in the years that I've been watching instruction happen, and with my years of experience, I actually am part of this. Like, I come from a Western
Totally.
mindset, I come from a Western upbringing, and then I come to Thailand and I learn it the way that Thais learn it, and so I have this weird bridging of like, let me explain this
You're amphibious.
in English,
Yeah.
but this is not how I learned it, like doing all the work for clinch, but then being like, hey, you can do this, that's not how it's taught.
Yeah. And
when
you jumped in gym situations and where clearly someone doesn't understand what the crew is
Well,
hoping
there's-
for, and you're
there's-
like, if we just tell him to put his foot outside, then he'll understand.
Yes, sometimes.
Sometimes.
But actually, the example I was just thinking
the
of
opposite.
is the opposite, where like I'll watch someone who's really struggling and the crew is trying to make a very specific correction, which is something like step on the kick, step on the knee, whatever the thing is. And so the person is like, I need to step to land the knee, blah, blah, blah. And it's like this totally confusing moment between both of them with this lack of understanding with this thing.
Okay.
And it boils down to your distance. Like, you just need to be closer. Doesn't matter what your step is. Doesn't matter like what the like is the angle of my foot this way or that way, or like this compartmentalized like, yes, step your foot here. It's like, no, just get closer. However you get closer, whether it's 2 steps, whether it's like you
Well,
wait for the guy to come.
Well,
like
a big part of Thai teaching as Tamachat is you get closer and then you find out what you have to do when you're closer to get closer. Like, do you step forward? Do you lean in? Like, you experiment. There's a lot of experimentation and development, but Muay Thai is taught to 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, like across the board. And the method is designed for that kind of evolution. Although, you know, Angie started when she was 30, right, or something?
32 maybe?
Yeah.
Yep.
So not in only children you learn as a child, and sometimes they start learning when they're like 15 or 17, maybe even. But I guess for me, we have to lock our eyes on to the fact that it's gonna get extracted. Like, as it passes through, thinking about WandaVision and that like dome. It's like when you go enter the dome, it's going to then redo your clothes. Like you're going into a different reality. And that this mechanical understanding of Muay Thai is a powerful distortion, but maybe a very necessary distortion of the art, because it cannot live and be disseminated to a non-elite, like non-fluent coach who knows some shit, like maybe knows a lot, but not fluent, like in the way that you'd be fluent in, but knows his shit, and then has to be disseminated to a classroom of 30 people and practice and everything. The entire structure is completely, pretty much alien to Thailand. And I'm like, you just have got to keep your eye on the fact that something is being transformed
Yes.
and radically changed. It's not the same. You were going to say something there.
Well, I keep having this thought. I can't remember what the name is, unfortunately, of like the entire system of health in India.
Okay.
It's all about balancing dosha.
Okay, you've lost me completely. So maybe some people don't.
It's a kind of medicine, and it's basically like the way you cook, the spices you use.
Oh yeah, the hot colds.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't remember what it's called. You balance your doshas. But this has been completely extracted when it comes to the West, which is, I, for example, was taking ashwagandha, which does these things. And so you're like, that's great. I want it to do these things for me. But you don't take into account that it does those things when it's balanced with these other things. People are like, I do yoga. Yoga is part of an entire system. You can't just pull that one thing out and put it here.
Well, you can't. The fact of the matter is that's what happens. You know. It's
when I say you can't, I don't mean you literally can't.
Yeah.
But for example, this like you read an article that says iron does all these things in your body. Iron is really good. Some people are anemic. So you start taking iron. You don't know whether you're anemic or not. And now you have too much iron. And now you have to go find articles that are about when you have too much iron.
Yeah.
And it's like there's this automatic kind of like goop situation that's like, ooh, this thing makes your skin clear. I'm going to take that and put it in a pill so that people can have clear skin. And it's like, in the context of all this other stuff, I got super excited the other day because on a YouTube video that Onyx had put together of Hippie's Kick.
Muay Thai Library session that
Right.
you filmed.
So
right?
Onyx.
Our sponsor.
Onyx, our sponsor, for a long time. Onyx edited it and made it compact, and we put it up on YouTube. And somebody had tagged someone else in it, and they were like, "This is one of the kicks from the Golden Age." And I loved that he was like, "This is one of the kicks," because so many other comments are, "Why would you choose this over the Taekwondo?" It's like, the question is, when would you choose this? Not why would you choose this or any of these things, but like the idea that there are multiples of something, or like a great, I kind of lost my thought on that, but like that things are connected to other things. You can't just like, I love this plant, I'm gonna pull the seed off and put it in the dirt that I have at home. It might not grow,
or it might grow
plant.
in a very different way.
take over my whole yard.
Yeah, but so this is great. You build out beautiful context, even larger concepts. My thing is, okay, if you want to be balanced or understand the seed or the medicine or the technique, you really probably, it's best if you understand everything that surrounds those things.
Oh,
What?
I just remembered what I was
You want to
trying
jump in?
get
I don't
at.
mind.
What
I'll hold my thought.
What I was trying to get at is this thing that you're like, vitamin C is great. The thing with the like, this is one of the kicks from the Golden Age that this guy tagged. Like, this is one of the kicks of the Golden Age. Is if you're like, oranges have vitamin C and carrots also have vitamin C. People are like, well, should you eat oranges or carrots? Like, they both have vitamin C kind of thing. Is that this like kind of nutritional knowledge, nutritional intake of how things are actually connected, where they come from, like context. The context is taught in Thai gyms because the context is Thai-ness.
Yes, and it goes all the way into culture. We have a series where we talk about how Buddhism is reflected in Thai principles, right? It goes way into the culture. I want to avoid the idea like, you guys are doing it wrong in the West. Instead, I want to be like, the way you are doing it, that's how you have to do it. Because in order for the technique or the art to go through all the transformations that get it from like a raw rock in the ground to a diamond on the finger, there's many transformations that happen for Muay Thai to live in a gym in the West, a process. And yes, you can be critical, like, that's not authentic and blah, 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 especially if a gym is like, we're authentic, you know, and doing things.
We why before every session.
Yeah, whatever. Some people might.
Yeah.
But I'm saying this is much less about criticizing and more like keeping your eye on the number of translations that have to happen for that technique, that kick, that teep, that turn in the clinch to have gotten all the way to the mat where you're training. And the reason is, okay, you like that turn. That turn is part of an entire concept of movement that probably isn't present in your gym. And if you want to understand it better, you have to go to the whole thing, which is why, one of the reasons why we do the Muay Thai Library. If you don't know, we have a documentary project supported by patrons and sponsors where you just travel and you spend an hour learning with great crews and great ex-fighters. We let an hour just unfold.
It's a long form training session.
Because
it's not highlights.
It's not just...
And the kick.
Yeah, it's not just like everything happening in that session, from the posture of the teacher to the way he corrects, or when he corrects, or when he decides not to correct, or why he laughs.
Or when I don't get it.
The tons of times you don't get it are really important. And it's like, you have to, we do this hour-long thing, and we did an intensive where we did 30 days straight with Karahat on the
7
Sylvie
days
intensive.
With Yokunpan.
Where you just let the thing unfold, because so you can see all the constituent parts that surround it, and you're still not getting it because that technique developed in a Kai Muay, that no longer exists anymore. Like the gym culture of the 1990s doesn't even exist anymore. It's been changed, and it's changing very fast. Petra Rung changed very fast in the last 5 years, and it's like these techniques, these things we love, there's an immense amount of connective material that just gets cut away as it's extracted out. And so I'm kind of like, okay, let's keep our eye on the fact that things get atomized, chopped, put into boxes so they can be taken somewhere else and to operate in a different marketplace. And also let's try to preserve the source. Like, let's not just chop down the entire forest so that we can get great IKEA furniture. It's like, make some IKEA furniture, let's grow some more forest.
Sustainability.
So that kind of idea of connectivity, which only comes from even paying attention to the kinds of transformations that have to happen. And this goes, how's our time?
1 minute.
Oh, let's start over. This goes from the last little bit. This also goes visually. Not only are techniques extracted by people who come and train, learn them in Thai gyms, fight, acquire them, and then teach them like magic tricks into the West with students and in gym settings, but it occurs visually, which is when people create videos that are either demo videos. We purposefully do not make demo videos. We might have made a couple, but you are like, this is not a demo. This is not a demo. And part of the reason we don't demo anything is we don't want to cut around all the connective tissue. But a lot of videos are about demos because you isolate the movement, the proper movement. Like for a long time, when we first moved here, there was big arguments about whether you point your foot down or up.
Both.
On the check. No, but like people who were taught, the point is not what the answer is, but some people felt there was a right answer. Yeah. And it's like, so visually isolating demos of techniques, which then become easily absorbed on Instagram in 60 seconds, or with graphics, we've done graphics to point like the turn of the foot or something. This is cutting around all the context. And highlight videos, like digesting a legendary fighter through a Muay Thai Scholar video, who makes great edits.
Makes very good edits.
And he captures, in many ways, the essence of fighters. He has great feeling for this, and he often has great music choices. But the whole process of the highlight video, appreciating Sanchai for his scissor kick or these things, it's like, once again, this is the same thing. It's chunking out a little piece of something, packaging it, like putting it in a video file, uploading it to a platform, disseminating it to your hub of partners that then like it and disseminate it and comment. This is the same exact thing as taking the technique, taking it to your students, having them drill it. It's the exact same thing as happening. You're creating a network of distribution that involves abstracting a small mechanical piece.
And it gets watered down with each iteration. So you learn it from your gym and you preserve it as best you can from that gym,
Totally.
but it's still just kind of a diluting each step.
And eventually,
from its source.
Eventually what will happen is the highlight concept of fighting will then shape fighting itself, that you fight to produce highlights. This happened with, like, let's say American basketball and the dunk, where suddenly the dunk was the thing that would get on SportsCenter. So everything was about perfecting the dunk. More and more exciting.
Didn't they like change baseballs so that there would be more home runs or something? Or they changed bats?
When Babe Ruth, oh yeah, that was when they were going for the home run record with McGuire and everything, and they juiced the ball, supposedly. But even when Babe Ruth was hitting home runs in the 1920s, no one even thought to hit home runs. But they were so exciting that suddenly it became a thing.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that Muay Thai in Thailand is actually going to start becoming shaped by the highlightization of the dissemination of its product. So already we're losing, like we hear from the legends, they're like, we didn't have TV. When I was gonna fight somebody, I had to watch from the side of a card that they were on, that my gym mate was on.
Right.
Like, the richness of the techniques actually was by the fact that they couldn't be exported or captured by anybody. People fucking thought Diesel was amazing who had never seen him.
Yeah, his legendariness was like Bigfoot. It was like you read about him in the paper, but you've never seen him.
Never seen him, maybe a few photos or something. But this visual, like, capturing of the moment and then dissemination of that moment or the technique or the thing, I'm not going to say it's a bad thing per se. Let's just be aware that it's happening, that Muay Thai is being translated and distorted and shaped to fit into little boxes that are sometimes like the Instagram box. Sometimes it's the drill that you do at your gym with your partner. And I'm like, okay, let's just not let this happen accidentally, or yeah, history happens, things change. I'm like, okay, this transformation is happening. Let's feed back into the source. Let's feed back into the source. When you come to Thailand, train with a legend. You know, like, feel why that teep works is because of all these other movements and weight changes. I don't know. I'm passionate about this because I want Muay Thai to have a growing footprint on the planet, but also in order to do so, it has to be distorted. And I'm conflicted about it.
Yeah, and the more that it gets distorted, like when the consumer ability of something gets more processed and processed and processed, it actually becomes unconsumable in its more raw source.
Yes.
And so people's eyes change, the way they see things. Like,
very much so.
We watch a lot of movies. If you watch like an old kung fu movie, the choreography and the like character is expressed in the way that they fight, and just the kind of like the whole structure of it is incredibly different from like the Bourne Identity, which is edited, or even an Avengers movie where there's like 10 Avengers going and you're like, I can't even track anybody. Like, I don't, tell me when it's done.
Eyes change
kind of thing.
Because then people learn to be able to track.
This is the thing. I think my brother's son, who's grown up with Avengers movies, totally tracks it.
Yeah.
Where he would be bored to death by a fight scene that lasts more than like 5 minutes or something.
Yeah, like a choreographed like kung fu 1980s like pop 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 dance.
Yeah,
like it becomes unconsumable, and I think that's what happens.
It's very different.
With Muay Thai,
I think of a movie like Saving Private Ryan that starts with the storming of Normandy and shots fired, and it's like you're right in the action immediately. And I'm like, I don't care about any of these people. Like, yes, it's very stressful, but it's not the same as if that scene were starting the third act or something. So when I'm watching Muay Thai now, and it's like a highlight, we get upset even looking at Golden Age fights where like they blend 1 and 2 together, and you're like, well, how did you get here? Like 3 is exciting, but now how did you get here?
Yeah.
When you actually get to see the narrative progress, that's how we consume it.
Yeah.
We're like, oh my God, this is so exciting. Whereas other people, because of the way that their eyes work, because of the way they've consumed this before, they're like, get to the...
Yeah, where's the exciting part so I can go watch another exciting part of another thing?
Yeah.
It can lead to a larger criticism of culture, which is an interesting thing because a lot of the reason why people are drawn to Thailand and the traditions and the depth of understanding and the beauty of the technique is that Thailand's culture is a fight culture 120 years old. It's so dense and rich, and it's the opposite of what we experience in our world.
Totally.
So it's like, I'm malnourished. I need what they have. But then when we go there, we change what they have so it can be brought into Wanda's vision.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
We eat this incredibly good soup. It's like the best chicken soup you'll ever eat in your life. And it's, in Thai, it's called ban gai. It means like a house chicken. And it means that it's a whole chicken that's been chopped up and put in the soup and stewed in there, so you have bones and all these different things. Someone would take that to America. People don't want to put bones in their mouths, and so they have like a nicely sliced chicken breast put in this soup, and you're like, that isn't.
Well, not only that,
That's
the
soup.
soup would start to evolve to other things. Like the whole
Wow.
soup would eventually change.
Totally. Your whole like packaging, processing thing totally fits with the way that we consume. I can't butcher a chicken. I have no fucking idea what it's like. I peel the cellophane off and I'm good to go. But like, I have no idea how to. I watched my mom do it when I was a kid, like cutting between bones, but I can't do it. It's
Yeah.
generationally been
Yeah.
lost already.
And this is in the context of really us trying to devote ourselves to capturing longer, bigger chunks of Muay Thai that maybe they're not readily consumable, but maybe they'll be consumable at another time in history even.
It's there's always a backlash or like a countercurrent.
Oh yeah, totally.
Right? So like I think that the people who get way into the library, we get incredible feedback and comments from people who are like, I have actually learned more from the Muay Thai library than I have 6 years at my gym. They're very different.
Experiences.
Not only that, but they're different pedagogies, they're different contexts, they're different experiences. Like the thing that really struck me about Master K, my first trainer in America, just upon meeting him, is I'm like, he's forgotten more about Muay Thai than it would take me 20 years to learn. Like this kind of steeped in experience that like when I go and I train with a legend and I'm learning from them, I don't have to know what their trainer was like or what their whatever was like. You can just feel that it kind of like got shaped from something. It wasn't a like, he taught me and so I do it exactly like this.
I have to say, like, being exposed to these legends and thinking about these techniques in a richer, broader way has just basically ruined my eyes for other things that knowledgeable Westerners, but even others, modern people, the things they celebrate, like the pad work porn that's up and getting 5,000 likes, or somebody throwing elbows in a fight over and over again.
Missing all of that.
No, landing them with a spectacular knockout, but off balance in every single strike. Like, you can see that his legs are not connected to his elbows, but all everyone else sees is like, boom, crumpling person. And I'm like, if his legs aren't connected to his elbows, this isn't, it's unwatchable almost for me. When you see a completely coordinated, fluid fighter, no matter their style, I would rather watch someone fight in the style that I hate, whatever style that is, like kicking Muay Thai. What is it, Muay Det?
With that.
Muay Det. I would rather watch someone who really knows that style than someone who fights in the style I like would be like pressuring Muay Khao style, who doesn't actually know the style deeply. I'd rather see the person who actually knows the style deeply, but it's kind of like ruined my ability to even have discussions with people because the eyes have changed so much that there's so many red flags going up in video for me that I'm like, I can't even discuss this really because we don't share perceptions. We live in a different world.
It's very,
like,
very
in a different
hard
world.
because you're like, I literally don't see whatever it is you're seeing. It's like,
Yeah.
people are like, oh my God, this song is so good. Listen to this song. It's so amazing. And you're like, this person is off key. Like, it's unlistenable.
Crank up the auto
And
tune.
other people are like, no, it's awesome. And you're like, I just don't, maybe you're like way into the lyrics. Like, I don't know, but like, it's not,
We're not talking about Neil
not
Young.
working for me.
It was like we were driving with Karahat, and he mentioned a very popular Thai fighter, and he's like shaking his head, and he's like, I would just teep him. Like,
Solved it.
just like, I don't.
He's like, everybody just.
But what Karahat sees, once he says it, I'm like, oh yeah, you would teep him, makes sense. No, for him, it's like a neon sign. Like, teep would destroy this man. But he has eyes that I don't have.
Yeah,
I can understand what I said, but I can't see what he has. What Karahat sees is like gaping holes.
it's like being terrified of a slow zombie movie and someone being like, just run. Like, just go faster.
Well, that kind of thing.
It's like that, where it's like, oh, it's not scary anymore because it's very easily solved.
And I don't want it to be like I have knowledge other people don't. In a way, I just kind of want to be like, let's just acknowledge that people live in aesthetic worlds, and those aesthetic worlds, which is based on what they consume, what they look at, and they might be very knowledgeable in those worlds, and they see things I can't see, and I probably see things they can't see. And then how do you have even a conversation, like, without just being an ass?
Yeah.
So I just have no conversations because it just like, I don't know, it's very, so, I don't know, there's something that maybe we can revisit because I feel like there's a larger concept here, which is this like extraction of value, like of mechanization of Muay Thai.
Yeah, and making things palatable and consumable and digestible and sellable.
And comprehensible even. Like for instance, Onyx's edit of our hour with, or maybe it was 45 minutes with Hippie, it was awesome. Like they put in the English subtitles, you're speaking English, so you can watch it without the volume on, which a lot of people have on Instagram. It actually captured much of the dynamics, and I was surprised, like much of the truth of what's being taught in that 45 minutes is actually in that video. I was like, this is not somebody who just chopped stuff together. They like understood and found a way to communicate it, and then they found a way for it to like leave the video and enter this other platform, this other register. And I'm like, that's kind of a good thing.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's not all bad. I don't know. I'm a little bit frustrated by it. Wait, you think I'm a little too...
We don't resolve things in the Muay Thai Bones podcast.
Just bring shit up. Okay, on to the next topic. Okay, as is the Muay Thai Bones style, we're gonna totally change up. While the camera's off, Sylvie's like, this will be a total change. And I'm like, okay, let's go for it. Okay, so back spotlight on Sylvie. You love it. This is actually an interesting, I know some of the answers of this, but I don't know all of them. And maybe not even most of them. And we've talked about it in the past that Sylvie fights an incredible size of opponent. For those that don't follow yet, she's got 200.
I think it's important to point out the size difference is incredible. These are not huge people.
Yeah.
So that people understand.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm not quite sure what that correctness.
Kevin's gonna throw the ball at me.
I don't know what the. Okay, I'll correct it. The weight differences you face are incredibly large.
Yeah, the
You've
differences
got
are huge.
260. What is it?
67.
67 fights. Out of your last 100 fights, I think in general, you fight up 3 weight classes.
Yeah,
maybe?
and they kept getting bigger there for a while.
Yeah. So I don't think there's a fighter on the planet who's ever fought up as much as you. Frequency and size. Somebody on the internet once challenged that and was like, Sanchai does fight pretty big people, but he's superior in talent to all of them. Almost all of them.
They're also talking about the end of his career where he's claiming, like 500 fights or something? So out of that, it's like not even a percentage.
Yeah,
it's like,
so anyways, I think you're fighting at this size disparity at just an insane discrepancy in size. And these are also include world champions, like several weight classes up. So the topic here is actually, how do you handle that? Because what other people might not be cued into is that you have a love-hate, but double hate, one love, relationship to this fact.
1 to 2.
And so then the quick answer is the reason why Shu fights so much is that we made a commitment to just fighting as much as possible, belief that fights are incredibly valuable, and then the more that you have, the more you're getting out of your life and your Muay. And it's like the only way in Thailand to fight all the time is to take disadvantages. And Thais do not pursue this generally, because if you take disadvantages in Thailand, it's actually a perception that you have no esteem
or power.
Yes, and power in a public arena is very important, respect and everything. So instead of like forcing people to come down and only fighting people with in some range to build public esteem in the culture, you actually take tons of disadvantages and are instead like thinking long term, fight. Like, this is an incredible country with fight opportunities. There's like none in the world. So let's just take advantage of it, even though it violates the norms of what top fighters do in Thailand. So, but this main topic is kind of like the cost, the burden, the psychology constellation that's involved with having this be your basic mode of fight operation, whereas almost everyone else fights in a different way.
What's the question?
Well, if I had to like point it to one thing, that you say you have a very strong sense that this is not fair, even though you and I together, we choose it.
Yeah.
Like, this is not imposed on you, but you have a very strong sense that this is not fair. And maybe talk about, like, fairness has way beyond Muay Thai in your character. Fairness is a very important concept for you as a small person, as a female, who feels like maybe things haven't been fair in other ways. Like, this is a chance to really talk about stuff that never gets talked about.
Yeah.
You're so quiet, baby. It's good. It's your little microphone.
There's a little line in the Bhagavad Gita, I think, that says you are entitled to hard work. You are not entitled to the fruits of it.
That's powerful.
And so I think that there's this thing about fairness, which is that it is incredibly honorable to be a purveyor of fairness, to like outwardly treat things with fairness.
Like other people?
Yeah, the way you interact with people,
To
or
be
like,
fair.
I'm not taking advantage of you. Let's make this very fair. Like, I'll be fair about this situation. That's very honorable. In the same way that you're like not entitled to the fairness that you try to put out in the world, believing that the world is fair is not a positive experience, because it's not. The world is not fair.
Okay, but these are fair matchups because you win 6 or 7 out of 10.
Well, this is
So
the thing.
in
is
a weird
that
way, they are fair.
when I look at it, when I'm like, if I fought someone my own size, which I very, very rarely have, but when I do, I'm like, I can see that was not fair,
Yeah.
that layout.
Yeah.
And so by taking a disadvantage of weight, significant size.
You were just saying just to jump in, you were just saying, we were talking about Diesel Noy and Samart, this huge mismatch that happened in the golden age, the Holy Grail of fights. And basically Diesel Noy came down to Samart's walk-around weight.
Right.
And it's considered like the huge mismatch in size. And you're like, most of the people I fight can't even come down to my
They
walk-around weight.
could not cut weight enough to be my walking weight. My walking weight.
Your walking weight. And not one of them could get down to what you could cut to. I don't think.
No,
Maybe one
not
or
the
two.
bigger ones that I fight now.
Fairness.
The thing is that when you take a disadvantage, it is on its surface and in its expression and in the way that all the people who are in charge of you act like it being a like this is not fair, this is not having any kind of power or whatever, blah, blah, blah. A disadvantage feels like a disadvantage. Like it feels like someone is taking advantage of.
Even if it, on other perspectives, is like a balancing. It just has its own feeling of.
One, it's intended to be a balancing thing, usually, especially if there's like gambling. It's meant to be a balancing thing, like making it fair. That's not often the case with me because it's like we have to keep pushing up to find someone who will fight someone to fight Sylvie rather than the like it has to be 8 kilos to make it even. Like 6 kilos would be the same as 8 kilos, but it's the 8 kilos kind of thing.
Yeah.
My point being, when something is thought of as a disadvantage, it feels like a disadvantage. Even if it's not. I feel like I'm being taken advantage of, and it feels shitty because it's all the time. It's every single time. And so it's like, I feel like...
But we make the decision. It's not like somebody is forcing you into a fight.
I am agreeing to these imbalances.
Yeah.
I am saying yes to them.
It has a weight.
But you...
And a feeling.
If your boss is like, come in on Saturday, you could say no, and you come in on Saturday anyway, and even though you chose to come in on Saturday, you feel shitty. You feel like you don't have any standing or status in your company. Like I feel like all of the signals in Thai culture that show that you have climbed to some level of achievement or something are being able to be like, you come up, you come down, I control this, I say no to this, I say yes to that. We say yes to everything.
Okay, but a context, the reason why we go this way is that the shape of Thai fighting is to stop fighting. Like, as fighters climb to the top.
The highest status of a Thai fighter is retired.
Is retirement. Because what you really are doing is you're climbing the hill of your weight class and maybe forced up a little bit when you run out of opponents, and you get more and more money bet on you. Your fights start at that point to become rarer and rarer.
Right. I won't get out of bed for more than this.
Can you command more money, and it's part of your esteem. Is like a lot of Thai fighter culture is about building the authority to say no and to demand and to basically eventually have like opponents that you have all the advantages on.
Right.
So that you build your name and your name. And this is actually not cheating. This is actually, you are at the upper levels of what it means to be a great fighter, is to basically eliminate all your opponents and eventually stop.
There's a very different, I don't know if it would be ethical or something, but like in Western culture, if you see a big dude kind of picking on a small guy, you're like, what a dick.
Yeah.
In many Asian cultures, definitely in Thai culture, they're like, the big guy must be the boss.
Must be the boss. like
there's no moral thing going on there.
Like, he's got some backers behind him. He's got the authority.
By behaving that way, he has authority, rather than like, you don't do that to people. There's this like kind of...
Yeah. So the context is, I wish I could do this other way. This other way leads to not fighting.
Yeah.
Eventually, if you take it to its logical extreme. A perfect example is what happened with Loma, who basically eliminated everyone in around her weight and just literally had no one to fight. It also happened with Petji Jha. And
because they won't take
extreme disadvantages, because it's not part of the culture to go up and fight 2-3 weight classes.
Because it's not showing.
It's not showing
weight,
that you
honestly.
have.
You don't have weight to throw around.
That you don't have respect, right?
Yeah.
So this is why you get somebody like Karahat in the Golden Age who fought up the majority of the latter part of his career because he was just too good, but he didn't have a powerful gym behind him.
Yeah.
So Karahat's last fights were at 122 with often above 122, where it's not, his fight weight was probably 115, he said. And he's like, he had to fight up in order to keep fighting because he didn't have any kind of big name behind him who were forcing disadvantages to build him up. So he actually had no respect in the game, even though he's fucking like
beating people who he has no business being in the ring
The
with.
gamblers loved him because they could see that, but the like hierarchy of like who has rank didn't.
100%. But then if you see somebody like Samart, considered the best ever, his last stretch of fights was almost entirely against smaller fighters. Like when he fought Panam Tumlek and like teeped him around the ring, and we're like, oh, the video, going back to the last thing, like, look at those teeps, him juggling him. He outweighs this guy by a good amount.
Like
and,
15 pounds.
and then he walks up and just fucking knocks him out cold. But this is, Samar had Yotong behind him. He had a big name behind him. And in the West, we're like, oh, that's not fair. But you know what? In Thai culture, that's actually the goal as a fighter, is to get to these places where you can call all the shots and eventually just retire on top. And I'm like, so Loma had to leave Muay Thai and she went into the UFC. Same thing happened with Petchy Jaw. She had to leave Muay Thai and she went into amateur boxing. And now she's coming back with, finally after several years, back to Thai fight. But I'm like, the opposite of what you're doing is basically trying to retire with a huge name and to have some power behind you. What we did was we removed ourselves from all power centers, like gyms that could shape your matchups, demand that you fight this or do this, build
It would
you.
make the arguments for me of like, we won't fight for less than this. We won't accept a weight
Like,
difference than this.
What's going on here?
I'm just making sure the time's good.
So, like for instance, right now there's someone who's trying to like make a matchup for you, a legendary fighter, and he's like, don't take less than this, and trying to like argue about the weight, and it's like, this is not our style at all. What are you giving that look for?
Because it's also an incredibly kind thing from
Yes,
him
yes.
that shows how much he values me.
Yes.
That he's like, value yourself.
Yes.
Don't fight for less than this. Tell him you won't come, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I love that he thinks of me as like, you've earned this. You're at this point now. You should behave like this.
Yes.
And I'm like, I love that you think that about me and I love you, but I don't want to run to retire. I'm not like rushing to retire.
Well, not only that, the kind of fighter you want to become, you're not near where you want to be. If you were like, I've climbed my hill and I have become what I dreamed of becoming, then it would make more sense. But you honestly feel like there's miles and miles and miles to run to get where you want to go. And you have to have opponents to run that. You can't just do that in the gym and then face 3 big names and then retire. It's like, and Thais just literally do not understand the kind of fighter you want to become as a woman, or even if it's a man. They wouldn't have a concept of you wanting to become a Yod Moy, like to have this fluidity or whatever. They're like, you win your fights, like you position yourself.
Do you remember Wong? When we were in Chiang Mai for the first 2 years, Wong's this incredible trainer, very drunk, very like
Drunken
master, like so amazing. We were in the truck on the way back from a fight one time, and he was talking about like the way that a small town fighter gets to Bangkok, and it was like he had this whole calculation that I swear could have changed every time he said it, but he's like, no, you win 2 and then you lose 1 and then you win 3 and then you go to Bangkok and then you come back and then you lose again. It's this whole like how you work your way up kind of thing. And this is like the story of how Karahat becomes Karahat, how Diesel Noy made it to the point where he then was undefeated for 4 years. Like
But he retired. And why did he retire?
He had no opponents.
But not only that he had no opponents, he got to the point where you go to heaven, fighter heaven.
Yeah.
Whereas you are now a legend. You get to choose who you fight. Nobody will fight me in my weight. I'm not going to fucking take a 25-pound disadvantage, right? And so he kind of ascended, and he had a huge name behind him in Clow to force the respect dimension of it. And it's just like, think to this though, when you get somebody like Krong Sok taking a 19-pound disadvantage against, who is that? Cayman. The Thai is, by taking that disadvantage, yes, we understand fair, because he's so much better skill-wise than Cayman. he's taking socially within his own culture the position of no power.
But
No respect.
yes, but Thais do love the small Thai beating the big Farang. They love that.
The gamblers. The gamblers.
It's got like a nationalistic thing to it, though. As
Well, for 100%, that the 100% that's the whole Sanchai aura. But I'm saying when these things are happening, you're not doing the traditional climbing of respect.
Yeah.
So, but we went the sidetrack just to maybe position this unfair feeling you have. It's like you kind of are left with no choice, because if you don't do that, you basically are driven into a retirement.
Right. Which is not what I love.
No, that would be very
I
difficult.
don't love not fighting.
So, but okay, we got the feeling of unfairness that doesn't scrub away. Like, even though you rationalize, to me they're fair, because if you're winning 6 or 7 out of 10, that's pretty much a sweet spot.
Yeah.
And I don't care who you're fucking fighting. If you're winning 6 to 7 out of 10, I think it's been 7, 8. It's the outcomes are showing whether it's fair or not.
It
but
means
it's
that
still,
you're challenged, but also pushing all the time.
And your win rate actually has been almost like at that for hundreds of fights, which is kind of amazing. So basically, the weights have been going up as you've been getting better.
Yeah.
It's a way of like running with a weight vest, really.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about just the weight of this unfairness, because it's very heavy for you. It's because it's every fight. And for me, I don't feel the weight at all. I just feel admiration. I'm like, oh, Sylvie beat another giant. Sylvie beat another giant.
Kevin is less like in the Thai culture than I am. Like, you're much less influenced by it. You're less affected by it.
Because
you're less,
I see
you
Thai
don't experience
culture.
it.
I see Thai culture restricting you. Like, if Thai culture had its way, you'd be sweeping a gym and greeting people at the door. Like, for real Thai culture.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be like Yod Moy Sylvie, incredible. Like, Thai culture doesn't produce you.
Yeah, nobody produces me.
Yeah.
I remember Jong Sanan saying, maybe it was in an
that
interview or something.
yeah.
He was like, I didn't want to be the wooden man.
Yeah. He's like,
It
I
was-
have many techniques.
He's like, I liked fighting this other way, but I was like really hard, and so they were like, you be this. And it's like, I guess it's kind of like being typecast as an actor. You know, like you have to play the dumb blonde all the time, or you have to like only be in action movies, and you're like, nah, I really like love theater. Like Hugh Jackman actually wants to make musicals all the time, but he has to be Wolverine for 14 years or something. It's kind of like this, where it's like, I don't know what I actually could have been if I had been put in a more traditional fighter path of like weight by weight matches kind of thing.
But you couldn't even be as a Westerner.
What do you mean?
There is no West. This is how Thais grow up, like Loma grow up
I'm
or
not
something.
talking about in the West. I don't like. You mean as a Westerner
like
in Thailand?
like if you went to Santai gym or something, like as a Westerner, that would be a different path. You're not talking about that. You're talking about if you had been a Thai person or something.
I'm just talking about a traditional fight. Even in the West, like you do not take weight disadvantages all the time. Like, it's not something that people do. Jong Sanan being forced to be this like plowing forward, taking all of this damage, whereas he's like, I would love to block. Like, you're shaped by and fated by like whatever your style and your abilities. Like, the fact that I could beat someone bigger made gamblers like me.
Yes.
It shaped who the promoters then wanted to put in front of me. Then people my size there are few of and didn't want to fight me, and so it was like, Karahat told this too. Karahat's like, there were people my weight or who were even a little bit bigger than me, but if they could lose to me, they wouldn't fight me, so I had to take someone even bigger, like even better kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, tell this story real quick about this Muay Siam guy who's like, oh my God, you weren't cutting weight?
Oh, shit.
Like, these are knowledgeable people. You don't even get credit within the Thai world of what you were doing.
There's another fallacy in the same way that, like, you should not believe the world is fair because it's not. You should not believe that people know what you go through or what you are behind the scenes when what you present is one way. People don't pay that close attention to you ever. I've been in Pattaya we're coming on 7 years now that we moved down here. There's a Muay Siam reporter. I like him very much.
Muay Siam is like the biggest
It's like the Ring,
Thai
sort of.
Thai boxing newspaper, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he reports for this region, which is the like central eastern region of Thailand. So he's been reporting on me for 7 years. He knows about me. He's been to many of my fights that were in Pattaya. He hasn't been to the other ones. So we've known each other for a really long time. He also reports on the other female fighters from and around Pattaya. So Stamp, Fairtex, Yod Cherry, Star, people like this. We were at an event together on Sunday, and we were just chatting, like just totally casual chatting. And I was asked what weight I am now, and I answered what my actual walking around weight is. And the guy who asked me,
which was what, 46,
I'm like
47?
46, 47. I'm a little bit bigger than I was before we shut down again for COVID. And the guy was like, no, not your fight weight, what you walk around at. And I'm like, that's both my fight weight and my walking around weight, because I fight at my walking around weight. I'm like, if I cut, like the last time I cut for a fight, it was 44. And the journalist, the writer, his eyes bugged out, and he goes, you weren't cutting for those fights that I watched you at Tepisit? And I was like, no, almost never. I've been 46, 47 for years.
Yeah.
Years.
This is like when you fought Stamp.
And
This is when you fought Cherry.
He was like, I had
Star
no idea.
was 52 kilos.
He's like, I thought you were cutting weight coming down to those fights. I was like, nope.
So people actually don't even know how small Sylvie is, the weight advantage, because part of it is you're muscular.
Yeah, but it's also like when you look at a program, they put the weight of my opponent. They don't put my weight. They don't put the like difference in weight.
There was that hilarious fight that you had.
Karchuk one?
No, against Zaza. It was those 3-round fight, and she beat you pretty good. I think she cut you. And there was some like back and forth on
with Pinto,
Twitter. Yeah,
her
and he's
boyfriend.
like, she weighed in at, what was it?
52.
52.
Yeah.
And we went to the video, and there's the like, Sylvie got on the scale.
It's an analog scale, so like the metal thing has to balance in order to be that weight. So it was set at 52 because that's what the weight is. So you step on it, and if it balances, you've made weight. So in the video, I step on it, and it's like, no.
It didn't even move. But this is the point, is that, and Takun, who's so smart as a promoter, he's like, oh, get off the scale, you made weight. But everybody was in the room, they saw you weigh 52. Because nobody was looking.
They wouldn't look.
They were just waiting to see if you weren't 52, if you were 53 or something.
Yep.
And it was like, the scale didn't even move. But it's so interesting because in their mind, same size.
Yep.
And I was like,
Which if you just look at us, not the same size.
not the same size. But in that little kerfuffle dispute about how much you weighed, the point was brought up, well, if you were smart about it, you would have forced a matchup that was favorable to you, which is exactly what we're talking about, is that if you have standing, if you have a name, you force bad matchups.
Yeah.
And so when you see fighters that don't fight very often, but then they get into a thing, it's because they forced a bad matchup. Otherwise they just retire, it would be fine for them. And I'm like,
or their gym does. Like there are some very, very famous Farang fighters who, you know, get into the like ranking system of Lumpini and Rajadamnar, and who like don't fight people their own size, and it's their gym is making
well, yeah, it's not fighter. Very seldom does a fighter actually. We're one of the few fighters in the whole country that actually make the decision on
like
who you're
promoting.
fighting. Everything else is gyms and managers and whatnot, promotions. But the point, I guess the point is this, is that part of the unfairness that you feel isn't just that you're taking a weight disadvantage, but it's also nobody even knows you're taking a weight disadvantage.
Yeah,
they literally, these are knowledgeable people. They see two people, but it doesn't even register in their mind that you're like 2 weight classes under or 3.
Do we have to restart that?
Oh yeah.
So
okay.
this is the thing, is that there is like a way of thinking that is very, very hard to change that way of thinking. Westerners have it, Thais have it, they often don't match. But there is like such a belief in like size. Like Thais love a big, strong fighter. They look at legs, they look at muscles, they look at abs. They're like, oh, I'm gonna bet on that one, like just because of the size. Like they love a big farang. They're like way into it. There's also like, once you add money, like once you add a Dermpan side bet or something like this, the whole like, can Sylvie fight this person changes. Yodkun Pan knows me. He spars with me every single day. He's bigger than me. He's better than me. And I throw him around sometimes. He feels it. And sometimes he's just like, oh my God. He has watched tape after tape after tape of me taking on opponents who outweigh me by 6 to 8 kilos. This is like 15 pounds. These people are visually much bigger than me. The moment he has some kind of like help in booking a fight for me, even though he knows I can beat people bigger, and there's like a Dermpan, he's like, no more than 2 kilos. Like it's all of a sudden like, we don't want, because it's stupid. If you're putting money on it, you're stupid for like there being such a huge.
That. It's like he might believe that you could win, but win a close fight. It's like you don't take the position of being the underdog small fighter and maybe lose. You gotta win.
Yeah.
Like blow them out.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it, is that as soon as you go to weigh in and you're fucking like you were what, 5 kilos less than, what's her name? She's the her fighter in Thailand now.
At what weight?
51?
Dang Kong Fa.
Yeah, you were like, their eyes almost fell out. Her boyfriend, manager, eyes almost fell out when you got on the scale. You were like 5 kilos less. But that moment, you got to win that fight.
Yeah.
Like, not close.
Yeah.
Because you're taking an inferior position. I think there's that element there.
Yeah.
Whereas in the West, we love
Underdog.
the underdog, the tough little underdog.
Yeah.
I don't think that in the Thai world it's quite like that. It's more like a circus.
Yeah, I mean, people give a lot of credit to Tyson for being small for the heavyweight class. He wasn't that small.
Against some people, he's pretty small.
Oh, some of those guys were really tall.
Yeah.
I hate tall fighters.
Okay, but so we don't lose the
Track on this, baby?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you still here?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have this weight of unfairness, and then you also have a psychological hill you have to climb every single fight, which is like strikes are not going to affect your opponent. You're going to be doing things in the early rounds where you can't move her. Things that you're doing right aren't having an effect. So you have unfair feeling, there's a feeling of unfairness, and then you have this like thing where you're like fighting a monster, really. Like, anyone who's physically bigger than you standing in front of you when you're small.
That's
you're
why
like,
I brought up Jongsanan, is that like I have been shaped by the fact that you cannot do some stuff against people that much bigger than you. Like it simply can't work like that. I've had people be like, I don't understand why you don't, and I'm like, because there's fucking 20 pounds between us. Like I can't do a lot of the things that I would love to do or be able to do. And then because it's so consistent, I don't then fill in those areas. Like I have to keep focusing on the areas that are like, this is how you beat someone 20 pounds more than you, rather than like, oh, this is how you fight really relaxed against someone your size.
There's very little leeway
Of development in fights. Like if you don't start clinching her in the first 2 rounds, you might lose that fight, even if you fight well. So you in the first 2 rounds,
you got to start pressing and clinching,
draining the gas tank. So you end up having to like, at fight after fight, have to kind of like Jongsun on it in a weird way. But I'm like, what is that? I can tell sometimes you feel like this is all too much. Like,
it's hard. It's very hard.
And then if you fought someone your size, there would be so much pressure on you too, because you haven't. It's a different kind of fighting to fight someone your size. It's not the same techniques. It's not the same.
Yeah, it's very weird. I've had very few experiences fighting people my actual size. But
there was a lot of pressure in a recent fight when we went down to Hippie.
Yeah.
That was a lot of pressure.
But it's also like I lift heavy weights all the time. Like I don't actually mean weightlifting, but like I'm moving huge people all the time. The angles are all like,
Yeah.
I do try to learn how not to muscle things, like how to use timing so that I can preserve this and all this stuff. But it's totally that scene in Spider-Man where he doesn't know he has his Spidey abilities yet, and he like rips the handle off the bathroom door trying to open it. Is like when I go against someone my actual size, I'm not used to picking up 5 pounds. I'm used to picking up 40 pounds. And so it's just kind of like, whoa, like kind of can't, like everything's very odd.
Disorienting.
There's a thing that you have to do mentally that's like, okay, this is not going to work in the first couple of rounds, but it will work in the 4th and 5th round. So like just keep pushing on it, make them tired early. Like you have to kind of plan for an entire fight.
When you're in the fight, like between rounds, are you feeling this is not a fair fight? Like if you're not pulling away yet and you're in the corner after 2 rounds, does that unfairness that sometimes you think about that you can't scrub out even though it is balanced?
I don't think so, because it's so normal to me. Like I don't have the like, what an odd experience to fight someone this much bigger. It's like, it's always like that.
It kind of also shrink in your mind. It's like when you see very big opponents, you're like, oh, she's not that big. And
my eyes are totally jacked in terms of like, I'll look at someone, I'm like, oh, she's kind of my size, and Kevin's like, nope. And then we go, and once we touch gloves in the middle of the ring, it's always like.
Is that a moment for you when you touch gloves, when you like get a real sense? Because some of these Thai girls have a very, because they've been
they know
fighting,
how to kind of like,
they've been fighting in like money gambling
like,
matchups and things, and they have this really amazing skill of like, what is it? They shrink.
They shrink.
They
it's like how Ray
punch.
Velez was like, he used to punk people at weigh-in and act like he was like really shy, and then once he got in the ring, he's just like a jerk.
Like you said. Yeah. But I mean, they have this really interesting way of like, when you touch gloves, this was not the person that you took a photo next to like 2 hours before.
They like unfold themselves and they're like a full 6 inches taller. And once they put the Muay Thai shorts on, you're like, her legs are huge. She was wearing like
sweat
track
loose
pants
track
before.
pants. Exactly.
Not always, because again, I'm like, oh, this is like similar, but it's sometimes when I'll see a photo afterwards, or like I'll look at the video to do the voiceover, and I'm like, Jesus, like you can see the size difference there that I wasn't as aware of.
Yeah.
There's also a, like when I had clinching partners at Petrang, they were quite big for some time. So like I never fought someone that big. Like my opponents were smaller than the people I was training with, and so I was like,
so
not so bad,
yeah,
you know. But it's like 70 kilos versus like 56 kilos or whatever. It's, I don't know.
Well, let me ask you, this is not the kind of question that we ever get asked on Muay Thai Bones, but I would love to ask.
Oh no.
Yeah. Of all the big opponents that you face, and you've faced a lot of very good ones, who are the ones that you're like, I want to rematch that person?
Like who I lost to?
Doesn't matter. Like there's been a big long train of them. Like, I would like the challenge of fighting that big. Like, Porn Pon's gotten even bigger. Don Kong Fa, Tanan Chinook. Like, I've grown, you've grown in the last year. You're like, I want to take that particular opponent who's got size on me. I'd like another try at that, even if you had beaten them. Like you beat Porn Pond, but
I don't know. I don't.
Well, I'm asking you to think about it. Like right now, think back. I know that everything you have fight so many times. People the water just rushes under the bridge.
I can't even think of someone who I'm like, I think I could do better against them now. Like, I'm sure I could do better against almost anyone I've fought now, but...
Like Tanan Chinook, your last Tanan Chinook fight was a disappointment?
Oh man, that sucked. That was the Alley Tears, wasn't it?
That was the Alley Tears one? You just don't look back, maybe.
I don't really think like that. Like...
It was weird. I was making a video edit of the trailer edit of the Kun Panit Muay Thai Library thing. I kind of don't like editing. And I was like, I'm just going to put some old photos at the end of this thing. So I just Googled Sylvie Muay Thai, and it was just like grabbing photos from your past fights and some photos of legends, some photos I took. And just be like a life, a career kind of thing. Like, this is what I do. And it was kind of very cool to like pop back into those fights and matchups a little bit for me. It's not something I think about a lot very much.
You think about people you'd like me to rematch, though.
Yes, only because they are like, this would be a staircase for your development in skill. Like, to be able to beat Petji Jha, who I might be the best fighter in the world. Like,
That's not a rematch, though.
no, but it would be it's the same as a rematch to me. Dong Kong Fa, I'd love for you to fight Pornpan again because of how she like literally pretends she didn't lose to you, like will not list your loss on her record.
I have fought 4 Farah.
Although she's gotten so big that I don't even think that fight is even humanly possible. And another one who got really big was Nong Bu.
Oh,
Lost
yeah.
2 on cut, but
Yeah.
she's gotten much bigger.
I might want to fight Nong Bu again.
She's very big now, though. Isn't she like 58?
6, 8, yeah.
She could. I think she drops to 56.
Yeah.
But Nong Bu, that was such a crazy fight. How they like tried to trick you into thinking she was a novice and not a world champion.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Sylvie knows everything. Tanan Chinook is always just such a challenge because of Muay Thai rules.
And because she just
And
knows
she's
how to
just
control
a beautiful
an opponent. Yeah.
She's a round manager in a beautiful way.
Yeah. She knows how to keep it in her lane
But then
really,
Alicia
really well.
beat her those 2 times, and I think
I've
that
beat her
maybe
before,
took,
too.
No, but
Yeah.
that took her. I think that took her spirit for fighting away a little bit. Those are tough losses for her. Someone her size. Yeah, I don't know. Gulab Dam. I would love to see that fight. That fight will never happen, but it really bugs me that she's ranked above you,
No.
though you beat her.
Well, she actually held the title, so
But it's not the WBC title.
yeah.
It's a title.
Well,
I don't think she's fought in like
depends on
4
who you
years.
ask when it comes to female ranking.
That's true. That's true. Well, I don't know why that bothers me. I'm not a really ranking person. Well, I like to abstractly rank things.
Kevin and I don't actually like chase belts. We don't care that much about rankings. Kevin makes like top 10 lists every now and again, just kind of like put in perspective.
Yeah, to
and
build
kind of bring awareness.
enthusiasm, Yeah.
They put together rankings, which is nice. It's a step forward in terms of like actually organizing women and keeping like a female fighter even list. It's not currently based on a whole lot because it was coming from total chaos. But in my rankings, I'm number 2, and above me is Gulab Dam, which is
Who you destroyed.
because of who they asked. But
Yeah.
Gulab Dam did not come out of the corner for
Yeah.
round 4 in our fight.
Yeah.
So
But they don't even know. Like I'm sure whoever made the list didn't even know that fight happened.
no, and she
Yeah.
also was under different management at that time, so it's possible that
Yeah. They don't even know.
who we're talking about doesn't know anything about it as well. So.
Yeah. It's one of those very small, petty things that almost never happens to me. But I think I was looking at it the other day. I was like adding up your victory totals against everybody in your bracket, and then in other weight classes, you have like victory
I've
totals. And
fought
like,
people in almost every weight class there.
well, no,
not the high
there's
ones.
very big,
Yeah.
but it's pretty amazing. But I think that's why that's fresh on my mind a little bit. Oh, and then I saw that Vivi made the list in the new thing.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy. Is that her name?
In English,
Wiwi-
that's her name. Wiwi in Thai. Yeah.
No, we don't usually talk like that about things like that, but I always think about like, this is the part of the thing. You basically have only one road ahead of you. Because you don't want to become some like promotion star that is called the greatest fighter who ever lived, as happens in promotions. You just have this grind of bigger and bigger and bigger opponents, which is like running with a bigger and bigger weight vest, which is a difficult path. But I'm like, what other path can you have other than maybe thinking, if I could beat this person giving up 15 pounds, that means I'm pretty damn good. You know, something, that's the only reason to think about possible opponents is like, not milestones, but markers or something. Like it's
Yeah.
very hard to beat a very skilled fighter and give up 15 pounds.
Yeah,
20
to
pounds,
me, more important than the beating or not beating is the performance. Like,
Really?
Like,
You'd be
if
happier.
Karahat could beat Wang Chinoy, he would be absolutely incredible. He's still incredible having never beat Wang Chinoy. His
I
performances were
guarantee
so
you,
good.
it was very important to him to win that.
I'm not asking him. He's so sensitive. I'm talking about me.
The non-sensitive one. Well, what beating means, honestly, to me, what beating means in Thailand, if you don't knock somebody out with a momentary, it means controlling the fight.
Yeah.
Dominating the space in such a way that the judges have one choice.
There is also this thing that we just did with the Gulab Dam example. We
Yeah.
fought one time. It went like this. It was a very long time ago, and that's the marker for like
Yeah.
what our skills. That's not real, but like Thais will have this thing where they're like, I beat Chart Chai too, or like I Chart Chai Pai Si Tong or whatever, and it's like, oh wow, like he was really good, and you beat him, and you're like, when was that? Like I was 7. And you're like, okay, awesome.
That's true too.
Like there's a little bit of that too. So my whole like, if I could beat them is like, it's context. You know, people have like good days and bad days. Like I've
that
beat Tanan
doesn't
Chinook.
matter.
I've lost to her way more than I've beat her. Like it's, I'm
She's
not.
always a good milestone because of her weight advantage and her skill level. Like those two things are really a beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
I will say that one thing that we both like, but that I like very much about Dong Kong Fa is that like her rematch game is strong. If she beats you, she will beat you fucking harder the
That's-
second time. If she lost,
That's what. I will.
God bless you.
Someone on Twitter want to talk about Muay Thai, female Muay Thai, and whatever, and kickboxing, whatever. And
Kickboxing.
It's not the kind of thing. One championship you want to throw out there, but the one contemporary thing I would like to say about Dong Kong Fa, who is not a pretty fighter, like she just is not. I'm talking about her
she's
skill,
also not a
her
protected
technical,
fighter. Yeah.
her technical skills, and she fights everybody, right? What people don't know about her, they like see her in the ring windmilling and whatnot. What they don't know about her is she's been a prize fighter since she was little. She knows how to fight.
yeah.
Like, and I don't mean fight hard. I mean, you feel the moment and you rise to the moment. That's what you have to do as a prize fighter. When there's a lot of money online, you rise to the moment. You rise to the moment. She learned as a prize fighting kid how to rise to the moment. That's actually the secret. One of the secrets about Loma is that she was a prize fighter when she was 6 years old or 8 years old or whatever it was. Yes, their technique, Loma's technique's beautiful or whatever. What's really special about these Isan girls is they're prize fighters little. And every time Dong Kong Fa has a close fight with someone and then rematches them,
She brings the tanks.
I don't know what she does
Brings the
different,
cluster bomb.
but she is like that little prize fighter in her. Those emotional skills come to the fore,
Yeah.
and it's actually one of the coolest things about her. And if you ever get to fight her again, that's
I better be
fucking-
ready.
It's not. I don't know what she does.
Yeah.
I was shocked how strongly she performed against Alicia. I was shocked, and then what she did with
Danny.
Danny, that's the which gym is that? There's the two sisters.
FA group.
I figure I was shocked, like she just, and it's not
We
like she.
thought that Danny had won the first one, so it was
I
like
think she won the first.
so.
I
Dong
honestly-
Kong Fa got the win
She
on the
got,
first one, and when it was rematched, she's like, I don't
promotional-
want to hear you're talking about like whatever.
Yeah,
They're like,
honestly, Danny won that. That was a promotional, like, I'm in the promotions pocket. That was unfair.
yeah, but Dong Kong Fa met it with the like her pride had been hurt.
Oh my
with people
God, there's something
talking.
about, I don't know about her talking, but that when she rematches, she just has, and it's not like she fights harder. It's not like, now I'm going to fight hard.
She fights hard all the time.
She fights hard all the
always fights
time.
hard.
But there's this weird thing. Like to win is a skill. And she has that. And now she honestly is, despite not being a picture perfect technical fighter, is maybe the top fighter in Thailand. She wants to fight that Stamp though, but they will never let her.
No. Keep these two apart.
But people don't. If people don't know, Dong Kong Fa was at Fairtex a little after Stamp. Stamp became the golden child of Fairtex.
Yeah, she was the first female fighter signed.
Yeah,
in a long time.
And Dong Kong Fa came on as the pudgy stepchild that we're just bringing her
we
in
need
because
a
she's
training partner.
orphaned. I think she was orphaned or something. But the idea was almost charity to her, and it's Stamp is the real talent. When she went into Fairtex, she was not the top female fighter in Thailand. She was a middle range fighter, I would be fair to say. But Dong Kong Fa was kind of the girl from Isan, kind of
She used to be much bigger than she is now. She was 10 kilos more than she was now.
Yeah.
So when she first came, she was this big kind
She
of.
was the joke teller and the.
She's funny.
She was not the. But no one was going to make her the star.
Yeah.
We're going to make Stamp the star. And they did. One championship. And they just did all the things to make her shine. Dong Kong Fa left Fairtex eventually. She was there for a while.
I think a year.
And it's a while. And it's so amazing that on her own, she created this path. And it was lucky that Max, we deride, I don't even know what the names of these are. Super Champ?
The one she fights on?
Whatever, hardcore.
Yeah. We just say Channel 8 in Thailand, but yeah.
Channel 8 in Thailand took her and made her their star, and she just kept beating everyone.
I think she does Muay Hardcore. She does the MMA gloves every time.
To me, they're the same
Yeah.
promotion. But it's this little story about the backward, overweight, but fucking prize fighter.
Her
from
dad is a
Assam.
famous fighter. Her dad was a really good fighter back in the day.
And it's so she still has a serious chip on her shoulder. And then she beat Alicia, who was one champion at the time.
She's give me that belt.
She is I know you have, I don't know, you have complex feelings about her, but I'm I really kind of like this kind of story.
We've been talking about success in Thailand being this you command big purses, you fight less, you have all the power to say this, that, and the other thing. Success is doing less and getting more kind of thing.
Yeah.
Thai women want to fight on one because the pay is much better than any of these other things that you're going to be doing in Thailand. Dong Kong Fa commanded the biggest side bet of female fighters ever. She had $1 million baht side bet.
Was
when
that
she
with
fought.
Alicia?
That was when she beat Alicia for the Thailand belt.
Yes, the second time.
And Alicia had just become one champion.
Yeah.
So Dong Kong Fa's let me in there, pay me to put on a show because she is very entertaining to watch.
But so everybody knows they built Stamp as the Thai.
Yeah.
So they're not.
One won't have Thais
They
fight with Thais.
and Thailand also doesn't like to have Thai versus Thai. If you look at all these promotions,
Well, not on these,
it's
3-round
Farang.
fights, yeah.
It's always the case.
Yeah.
And Westerners benefit from this because they're always allowed to be the Farang versus the Thai.
Yeah.
So there's no way that Dong Kong Fa could fight Stamp in one.
Yeah, I mean, she should have been able to fight Alicia for the belt because that's Thai versus Farang.
No, but the Thai is, the promotion is making the Thai.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I'm
Fa.
saying Dong Kong Fa's argument here.
Yeah, but she is this is the thing. She was the ugly, well, not literally ugly, but the ugly stepsister of Fairtex who kind of left and then created her own path. And then she's like, let me,
Her empire.
let me into one.
Yeah.
Like how my beautiful sister got in. You know what I mean? And it's something I don't know, I kind of, where she is in her little fight, non-technical. Everybody's Muay Thai in Thailand's so technical. And then you watch her fight and there's
Not
not
all of it.
technical. But she's just a little scrapper and just, she has that, I think she learned from Fairtex, the spamming punches.
Wait, I just want to tell this story
Oh, good.
because we've been talking about her so much. I have a very soft spot in my heart for Dong Kong Fa forever because we went up and fought in Karat, which is where she's from, and I was late on this
This
card.
was years ago.
So many years ago. Before she ever came to Fairtex, it was like the first couple of years we were in Pattaya. But we went up on our own. This is how we do it. We like try to find a corner when we're there. The way they do fights in Asan is like they have a list of like 27 or 30 fights and they like mixtape it. They like DJ it. So even if you're like 6th on the card, that does not mean you're fighting 6th. They just go by what would be exciting for gamblers at that point. I fought late on that card. It was like 2 a.m. Poor Jaidi was like getting bit by everything.
Yeah.
Dong Kong Fa fought before me by a lot, by like, she was maybe the 10th fight on the card or something, and she was amazing. She like sandbagged it for like 3 rounds and then just destroyed this girl who was bigger than her by quite a bit. And at that time, I think she was maybe like 60 kilos. So the girl she was fighting was like, I don't know, maybe 10 kilos bigger than her.
Really?
She
was giant?
She was big. So finally, it's my turn. I don't know my corner. We like go up into the ring.
We went up without a corner. We find the corner.
We're like, can you help me? They're like, sure. In Karat, we tend to have this military guy that like comes and helps. So he's in my corner or whatever, and it's like starting of round 2, and all of a sudden, Dong Kong Fa has just climbed up on the ring and is like yelling at me what I should do.
Wasn't she in the ring?
She got in and was like putting water on me. Like she totally took on the like corner duties, the like worker corner duties, and she's like, all this, gotta go, you do this, all this stuff, blah blah blah. Like just totally came in and helped for no reason. Probably 14.
I think 14.
After the fight, which I won, she comes over. I think it was near Songkran. She was wearing this like kind of Hawaiian shirt. She comes over and she's like, we should fight sometime, not for a dermbon, just for fun. And I'm like, there is nothing fun about fight. I just watched you fight. She's like 60 kilos. I was like 46.
She was too big, and she's also 14 years old.
Oh my God, it's amazing. But she wanted to fight at
but she wanted
Suranari,
to feel what it was like. She just wanted
She
this
was like, I like the cut of your jib. We should fight just for fun. I love that about her.
And now, what is she? She's like
52?
19?
Oh, yeah. I think she's 19.
Yeah.
She's still young.
That was a crazy experience. So I don't know. I kind of like pull for her in some amazing way, only because of this, when she was like the stepsister of Fairtex. It's very, I don't know, it's kind of like, she embodies a kind of female fighter.
She's what you respect about me, which is she is not promoted by someone. She is a self-promoted, like.
But then she got into a position with those promotions where they made her. Sa Sing is the star.
Yeah.
And then they made her the like star.
But if she had not been what she was to start, they wouldn't have been like, yeah, more of that. Like there have been Thai girls who came on who they're like,
no, she earned
that.
She earned that position, and she also politically connected to Sa Sing, I think, in some way. But when she left Fairtex, she didn't have. There are no paths.
Yeah.
Before Super Champ and Max, there was no path for a female Thai fighter.
Super Champ and Hardcore.
Oh, sorry, Hardcore.
Yeah.
These exciting names, they blend in my brain.
The 3-rounders.
But she, I don't know, it's just a very kind of interesting thing. So we'll see. All right. So
I think you have to start and stop it to sign off.
Oh no, we have a little thing.
Okay.
So we're signing off. If you're watching on YouTube, become a patron. You get the full audio, all our podcasts.
If you're watching on YouTube, this scenery is for you. Kevin came up with us doing this outside. For you guys.
Yes. For only $1 as a patron, you get all of our podcasts.
You can subscribe.
You can subscribe through your little subscription
Spotify
software.
Or whatever. Yeah.
No, you name the one you can't subscribe to.
Oh, not that one. Anything but that.
iTunes.
iTunes.
Yeah. And whatnot. And what do we usually say? Thank you to our sponsors.
Thank you to our sponsors.
Onyx MMA, who's been sponsoring us forever, and Low Blow.
Low Blow's awesome.
You can't just say that because then it sounds like you're being like fake. We actually love Low Blow.
We love all our sponsors, honestly.
Yeah, but for real.
For real.
Yeah.
I wear my Low Blow every day because of sparring.
Totally. Okay. And we'll try to do this in a couple of weeks.
Cue music.
Oh.
Dun, 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 dun.
Dun-dun-dun.